right and left, and also anyone wish to have the interpretation, there is outside interpretation devices. You may welcome to get one to listen to some of the episodes of this event. It will be in Arabic and others will be in English. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أصحاب السعادة، السادة ممثلي شركات صناعة السيارات، الحضور الكرام، السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب بكم في رحاب الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة في هذه الورشة، والتي تأتي استكمالا لجهود الجهات المعنية في البرنامج السعودي لكفاءة الطاقة لتأكيد الشراكة والتعاون الفعال مع الشركات المصنعة للسيارات في إطار جهود المملكة لرفع مستوى كفاءة استهلاك الوقود. نبدأ هذه الورشة بكلمة افتتاحية يلقيها سعادة المهندس عبد الله بن عوض القحطاني نائب محافظ الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة، فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أصحاب السعادة، ممثلي شركات السيارات، والزملاء الأعزاء في برنامج كفاءة الطاقة وفي الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة، والتي نعتز بأننا جزء مهم وركن أساس من هذا البرنامج الوطني المفخرة لنا وطنيا، والذي أصبح بحمد الله تعالى ثم جهود الزملاء أيضا كما نقول يعني أحد الحالات الدراسية التي يعمل معها بنش مارك. فهذا بفضل الله عز وجل ثم جهود الزملاء وتعاون الشركاء من الجهات المختلفة من شركات مصنعة في مختلف المنتجات، سواء كما اليوم عندنا موضوع السيارات أو المنتجات الأخرى التي غطاها برنامج كفاءة الطاقة. يسعدنا نرحب بكم في الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة لنرسخ ونواصل سويا مسار الشراكة والتكامل فيما بيننا، والذي بدأناه في نوفمبر من العام 2014 ميلادي فيما يخص السيارات، بعد توقيع أكثر من 86 شركة من مصنعي السيارات حول العالم مذكرات التفاهم مع الهيئة للالتزام بمتطلبات المعيار السعودي لاقتصاد الوقود، حيث تمثل هذه الشركات مصدر صناعة أكثر من 99% من السيارات في المملكة العربية السعودية. ويطيب لي أيضا أن أتقدم نيابة عن معالي المحافظ وعن الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة وكل الأجهزة الوطنية التي شاركت في هذا البرنامج الذي كما ذكرت هو مفخرة وطنية، بالشكر لصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد العزيز بن سلمان، ونقدم له أصدق مشاعر الشكر والامتنان لدعم سموه الكبير ومتابعته الدائمة والحثيثة لهذا البرنامج منذ بداياته. وهذا لا شك يؤكد اهتمام الدولة أيدها الله وسموه الكريم بمواكبة التطور والتوجهات العالمية نحو ترشيد الاستهلاك، بما يحمله من عوائد اقتصادية واجتماعية وبيئية كبيرة لمملكتنا المعطاء حرسها الله. أيها الحضور الكريم، استكمالا للتجربة الرائدة السابقة للمملكة العربية السعودية في التعاون مع الشركات العالمية في مجال السيارات، والمتمثلة في تعاون عدد كبير من مصنعي السيارات حول العالم، بالإضافة إلى الجهات المشاركة في البرنامج السعودي لكفاءة الطاقة لتطبيق المعيار السعودي لاقتصاد الوقود، والذي يهدف إلى تحفيز الشركات المصنعة للمركبات على إدخال أحدث تكنولوجيات كفاءة الطاقة إلى المملكة، وتخفيض استيراد المركبات المجهزة بتكنولوجيات قديمة لا تتوافق مع التشريعات المحلية المعتمدة. واستمرار التعاون البناء بين الهيئة وشركائها من الشركات المصنعة للسيارات في مجال إعداد المواصفات القياسية للسيارات، والتي تسعى الهيئة دائما أن تكون تلك المواصفات مواكبة لأحدث الأنظمة والتقنيات الحديثة المطبقة في الدول المتقدمة، فقد قامت الهيئة بتنظيم هذه الورشة لاستعراض ومناقشة ملاحظات الشركات الصانعة حول الإضافات التي تمت على المواصفة القياسية السعودية رقم 2864 والمواصفة القياسية السعودية 2847 والخاصتين بمعيار اقتصاد الوقود والبطاقة الخاصة بذلك، والتي أعدت بسبب السماح بدخول السيارات الهجين والسيارات الكهربائية لأسواق المملكة. كما تستهدف الهيئة من تنظيم هذه الورشة مناقشة أي ملاحظات أو تحديات لدى الشركات الصانعة على النظام الخاص بإصدار بطاقة اقتصاد الوقود، ليتسنى للشركات إصدار البطاقات دون صعوبات أو عوائق بإذن الله تعالى. الحضور الكرام، قبل الختام أود التأكيد على أننا في هيئة المواصفات وضمن آلية التكامل والمنهجية المعمول بها في البرنامج السعودي لكفاءة الطاقة نرحب ونسعد دوما بكل جهد أو فكرة تخدم التنمية المجتمعية والاقتصادية المستدامة في مملكتنا المعطاء وتحافظ على مواردنا الطبيعية. أكرر شكري وتقديري لصاحب السمو الملكي الأمير عبد العزيز بن سلمان على الدعم والتشجيع الدائم، والشكر موصول لكل من ساهم في الإعداد والتنفيذ لهذا المشروع الوطني وشركائنا من الشركات المصنعة للسيارات على الحضور والمشاركة، والشكر موصول للزملاء الذين أعدوا وجهدوا لإعداد هذه الورشة، ونتطلع دائما لتلقي ملاحظاتكم وآرائكم، وأسأل الله عز وجل لنا جميعا التوفيق والسداد، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا لسعادة المهندس عبد الله القحطاني نائب محافظ الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة. السيدات والسادة، قامت الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة بالتعاون مع الجهات المعنية في البرنامج السعودي لكفاءة الطاقة بتحديث المواصفة القياسية السعودية 2847 والمواصفة القياسية السعودية 2864، وذلك لمواكبة التطورات في هذا الجانب. وتقام هذه الورشة لمناقشة الملاحظات والآراء لدى الشركات المصنعة للسيارات باعتبارها أحد أهم محاور نجاح هذا البرنامج الوطني الاستراتيجي، حيث سنبدأ الآن مناقشة الملاحظات على الإضافة الخاصة بكل من المواصفة القياسية 2847 والمواصفة القياسية 2864. والآن أدعو المشاركين في هذه الجلسة للتقدم للصعود على المنصة، وهم المهندس نايف الحميضي، المهندس ناصر المرشدي، والمهندس محمد الإبراهيم، والأستاذ ساري الحسيني.
عشان كذا جايب لي أنا. هلا. Good morning, gentlemen and ladies, for the first time. I think it's easier to do this in English, since we all speak English, and that will reduce the translation and make it easier for all of us to understand. First, we'd like to welcome you to SASO. This is a meeting in a series of meetings and workshops that we've had in the past, and we're going to continue to have in the future, for the objective of sharing our opinions, developing standards that work best for the country and the industry as well. I'm going to go through some of the comments that we've received from you, and we're going to give you some of our responses. But what I want to stress on is this is not a presentation that we're giving to you. This is a workshop. So in any point in time where you do have a question, where you want to discuss any subject, please ask me to stop and we will discuss it, because that is the objective. This is not a presentation. This is not in any way a one-way delivery system. All right. So what we're going to start with we're going to start by discussing the fuel economy equivalency, which is the big elephant in the room, since most of the comments were on this subject. And we're going to talk about 2847 and 2864 all together, instead of just doing one at a time. So the first thing that I want to mention is that some of the comments that we've received is that the standard is no longer aligned with NHTSA on the fuel economy equivalency for electric vehicles, and we just have to stress on the fact that the Saudi CAFE or the SASU CAFE does not necessarily have to adopt everything in NHTSA as is. And as you remember, when we first established the standards, there were some key differences between the standard that was established by NHTSA and the standard that was established by SASU. One of the key differences is that we had a phase-in flexibility mechanism in the first 2 years. Now, this flexibility mechanism was never existent in the NHTSA standard or the EPA standard, as a matter of fact. The second difference is that the CAFE targets in SASU standard, which is applied in Saudi Arabia, is 10 to 15% lower than that in the US. So these are two key differences, but also there are some other differences. For example, the light-duty vehicle weight, where we apply the standard on, is lighter by 300 kilograms in Saudi Arabia than in the United States or by NHTSA standard. And also the AC credits that we have here were adjusted so that we meet the Saudi context. So what we're saying here is that the standard does not have to be 100% match of what is in the NHTSA standard or in the EPA standard. Sometimes the standard needs to be changed in order to fit, in order to fit the local context in Saudi Arabia. And this is something that we want to stress on, is that the standards, again, do not have to be a 100% exact match, and they were never a 100% exact match from the day that we have established the standard. And please bear in mind that some of these comments and some of these changes were actually requested by the manufacturers themselves. They were not all proposed by us. Now, on the other part, we've also looked at the manufacturer's proposal to use the petroleum equivalency factor. Now, the petroleum equivalency factor, as you understand, converts the electricity, or uses a conversion factor from kilowatt hours to gallons, right? In order to convert the electricity equivalency into electricity into liters equivalency of gasoline. Now, the situation is that this petroleum equivalency factor, we do not believe that we should use the same factors that are applied in the US, although this was a proposal of many of the manufacturers. And the reason is that the equivalency factor in the US uses a 0.15 divisor. So in essence, the fuel economy of the electric vehicle is multiplied by 6.67 in order to enhance the fuel economy of these electric vehicles. Now, the issue of this is that we are reflecting a fuel economy for electric vehicle in kilometers of liter equivalency that is not realistic. It is not the real fuel economy of these vehicles. And the issue with that is that although we want to incentivize these vehicles, we want these vehicles to enter the market, and we want the consumer to accept these vehicles, but we are depriving the country of achieving the targets of the fuel economy standard. Now, if I am shifting, for example, a portion of my vehicles from gasoline cars to electric vehicles, all right, but the overall energy consumption of the country is not changing because I am burning, and I'm not telling you a secret here because this is available information, and because I'm burning crude oil, or because I'm burning fuel oil, or because I'm burning diesel to produce electricity, how is that benefiting the country in any way? If my overall fuel consumption is increasing or is stagnating at the same level, although I'm introducing more electric vehicles, So how am I achieving my targets? Again, we have to remember what is the target of this fuel economy standard. The target of the fuel economy standard is to reduce energy consumption in the country. Well, not energy consumption, but at least energy growth in the country. But at the same point in time, through improving the efficiency of vehicles. Now, if I'm improving the efficiency of the vehicles, artificially or whatever you want to call it, but that is not achieving my overall objective of reducing the energy consumption in the country, I do not see how we've achieved our targets. And we would not have been achieving our targets, to be completely honest with you. And this is the main driver for us not to put an artificial fuel economy, or not to put a divisor, I don't want to use this word, but not to put a divisor or supercredits at this point in time. Now, this does not mean that this will remain as is for the coming decade or so. First, we do have a review of the standard that you're going to see by the end of this year, and we're going to talk about this a little later. And this may include some things. Now, I understand that that the country is shifting into renewable energy, but that is actually going to work in your favor, because as we move to renewable energy, that's in the favor of electric vehicles. Well, I know that not all manufacturers are interested in electric vehicles, so it's going to be interesting for you if you're producing electric vehicles. As we are moving to solar power and PV and the projects that you've been hearing about, and the emissions from the power generation sector are going to reduce significantly, then that is going to reflect directly into the efficiency of the electric vehicles. So we just don't want to go ahead of ourselves and put targets or reflect a fuel economy for these vehicles that is not a reflection of the current case. Okay, now, again, one more thing that I want to address is that the actual equation that we are using in the SASU standard is not something that we did come up with. It is the same equation that is used by the EPA. And if you think about it, it's actually the same equation used by NHTSA with the change of efficiency into emissions, but we're just not using the divisor. And the equation as is actually proposed to be used by the EPA standard for models of beyond 2025, but again, after selling a certain amount of vehicles. Maybe I just want to really explain how the methodology is done in case someone here is not familiar with it. Can someone from IT help us? So what, the problems of technology. So what I want to say is that, okay. So what we'd like to do is just to explain this real quick for someone who is not familiar with this. And what we're saying here is that we do have we do produce electricity using a fuel, right? But the efficiency of the power production is about 38% now in the country. And then, so that means that we're losing 62% in this conversion process. And again, we lose 93% during distribution. Now, the factor of doing a direct conversion from electricity to gasoline is not fair, because for the country we are losing more than 40% of this, more than 70% of during the conversion process. And so what we're saying is that the PEF, if we're taking it as is, the petroleum equivalency factor, if we're taking it as it is for Saudi, then it would be 3.8 kilowatt hours per liter equivalent. And if we take an electric vehicle, right, if we take an electric vehicle and we do this conversion for it, then we would arrive at about 21.1 kilometers per liter. Now, this is the methodology if we use the efficiency factor as it is in NHTSA, but we're not using a divisor of 0.15. On the other hand, when we were using the emissions factor and we're doing this for the same vehicle, which has a consumption of 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. And we do take the emissions in the distribution, the emissions in the generation, and we do take out also the emissions that happen during the production of gasoline. And this is all taken into consideration the Saudi context. Then taking this methodology that we are using now in the standard would actually yield a fuel economy for electric vehicles that is higher than if we had used the same methodology that is applied in NHTSA that is proposed, but without taking the divisor into consideration. This is starting to feel like a presentation. I don't see anyone asking or anyone commenting, although I've expected a lot of comments at this point in time. Okay. We're going to finish earlier than planned, apparently. All right.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm Andy Taylor from Ford Motor Company. To help you here with the questions, I think to help the dialogue really to start it. So I understand everything you've said so far, and I guess I'm predicting how the outcome is going to be here. Right? And I absolutely understand that in Saudi, the equation for electric vehicles is different from other regions of the world. But in the other regions of the world, they don't care about the logic of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are promoted in the context of other political gains, political issues. And there was an expectation of all car companies when we signed up to Saudi Kaffae that we all knew that there was a 2025 target, and that target was going to be the same in North America. And there was an expectation, I would largely view, that the methodology for the fuel consumption of all vehicles would be the same, and how they would be treated when we signed. So this is a fundamentally different thing, and we would say, I say we, Ford would say, that the achieving compliance to a 2025 target in North America cannot be achieved without electric vehicles. Therefore, by de facto, that target cannot be achieved without electric vehicles in Saudi Arabia. And if you're handicapping, or the proposal is to effectively treat them differently here, there's a disconnect between the targets and the methodology. And that, I think, captures, in my opinion, the challenge here, is that you're changing the measurement, but the target appears to be the same. And that gives us, I don't see how we can go forward with that situation.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that up, Andy. I do have a couple of points on that. First, we no longer know what the targets in the US by 2025 are. At least not now, but hopefully by the end of June or July, we'll know what the new targets are going to be. And they look like they're going to be relieved a lot, okay, to the point where well, at least mass sales of electric vehicles may not be necessary in order to achieve these targets. Although I know some manufacturers are lobbying for increasing the targets again so that they don't have different targets in California and the remainder of the US. But again, we don't know how this is going to go yet. So the targets for 2025 have not been set yet in Saudi Arabia. We don't know what the targets are going to be in the US after the EPA and NHTSA, or the joint standard, is updated. And we will definitely take this into consideration when we're developing the second phase of the standard that you're going to see in 25, and sorry, for 2021 until 2026. Now, one of the challenges that we have in developing the standard, right, is that we don't know what the standard is going to look like in the US as well. And this is why we're delaying the introduction of the standard, which was, we were planning to give you a draft by next month, by June, but I think we're going to have to delay that. Now, the other part is that reviewing the standards that have been published by the EPA and NHTSA, we did not see that the projected mass sales of EVs or PHEVs, even by the year of 2025. They're assuming the introduction of other technologies that are going to improve the vehicles, but the EV and PHEV penetration in the standard itself, or at least in their projections, now I don't know how accurate their projections are, but taking those into consideration, the penetration levels are quite low. If my memory serves right, because I haven't looked at this projection for quite some time, that the BEV penetration did not exceed 2% by 2025, at least in the standard. 10%? No, not PHEV, EV combined, just the BEV. But anyway, we'll have to go back to these projections. But point taken. I believe this is a good point, and it is something that we do have to take into consideration. We're setting the 2025 targets, but you also have to take into consideration that it's very likely for the EV equation to remain the same, obviously, but for the parameter used in the equation to change significantly to match the ambitious targets that we have in the country. So although the equation may remain the same, the parameters may change, which will definitely change the fuel economy equivalency for these electric vehicles.
So Mohammed, it's the surprising nature of this is the challenge, right? None of us, all of us plan a cycle plan, which has a long period of time, and this is a fundamental change in the product expectations in this region, right? And I believe that there will be knock-on consequences for the rest of the, not just for Saudi, but for the rest of the region, because there's the calculations involved here. So I don't know how much time have we got to discuss this? Is this something you were going to come over from this workshop and it's going to be done, or are we going to have time to, further discuss this before the decision is made?
The thing is that electric vehicles are going to come into the country in the next month or two, right? So something has to be agreed upon in order to calculate for these vehicles. However, as I've mentioned, we have an update to the standard that is coming in in 6 months or so, and that we can certainly work on together.
To follow up that, Phil Wetzel with FCA, the assumption that in the U.S. all the way up to 2025 would not need high levels of EVs and PHEVs was not a correct assumption, and that's the reason why the standards are reopened now to be drastically reduced. Even when they were signed, all the manufacturers knew it would take a significant portion of EVs in the later years of that program to be compliant. And that's where that 0.15 factor came in, was the incentive for the manufacturers to develop the technology, and also the incentive to advertise the higher fuel economy to get the public to want to buy them as a way to subsidize the vehicles to get market acceptance by the time 2025 came, with the hope that by then the vehicles would be selling in high enough volumes and prices would come down, that then a switch to an equation like this potentially would be possible. So that's to get the market to initially adopt these vehicles. That's where that incentive is very, very important to make the program work. Otherwise, these will just be very expensive vehicles on the market that don't look like they give significant improvements in fuel economy, and no one will want to buy them, and then it cannot be used as that compliance tool that is needed to make the CAFE program work.
That I understand, but you can understand how this does not fit exactly in the Saudi context, right? We don't have any manufacturing here, right? We do not see that the battery technology is going to develop here, or going to have that manufacturing, or we do have the R&D for this battery technology or for the vehicle technology. Has that been the case, a different look has been taken, maybe a more lenient view of the EVs would have been taken to take that into consideration. But since this is not the case, right, for the time being, we do not see a role in developing this developing this technology. Now, on the other point, saying that there was a, well, I'm only quoting the EPA, that there was a mistake in the targets in taking them into consideration, or the achievement of these targets. We do understand that, and we are waiting to look at what the EPA and NHTSA are going to come up with in the next phase. And if we feel, through discussion with you, that these targets are not achievable with the conventional technologies, then we're going to come up with a way together to make it work.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Ahmed Al-Boui, FCA. I just have 2 comments, and I wanted to make sure, or at least make sure that you and the standard organization are aware of the complexity and that we are going to face, basically. One is, in 2014, I believe, when you make presentation about how the Saudi and the USA model are very much the same, and that's why you adopted the US NHTSA and EBA model for Kafé target for Saudi Arabia to achieve the goal of Saudi Arabia of reducing fuel quality for economy. That was the people attending this presentation in their mind and their planning for 5-10 years. They have the same thing. They have adopting that Saudi adopted the US model, and accordingly, in their mind and their planning, which take about 4 or 5 years every time they make a change, that it goes the same way, will be included the electric vehicle in the calculation as it is in the APA. I understand that, as Andy indicated, that the target might be the same or even different. The factor might be the same or different, depend on the environment and the country. So that's understandable. The point is the surprising factor in that. We were surprised about that, and I think what we're looking for is how is this going to affect our compliance. So in the next couple of years, I think most of us, we're going to be in the red, basically. And how are we going to achieve that without the electric vehicle? That's one issue. The second part, the equation that you use, actually, you're right, it's from EPA, but it was based on NHTSA also in the future, 2026 or something, which is basically going to include percentage of the vehicle, I believe it's about more than 10% right now. So to us to accommodate that or to come up with another technology that's going to be replacing that, which basically going to be diesel mainly, is going to be very expensive in the manufacture. So, and it's going to take longer time to compliance. The question now is, we have standards that said if you don't comply in 1 year, you're going to have a next year to comply by a vehicle model, and after that you're out of the market. Are the Saudi government and planning to see that the market start reducing their vehicle from most of the country, most of the manufacturer? I think we need to think together about this, how we're going to resolve this issue without having the EV part of the equation.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let me just correct a piece of information there, is that it's not a 1-year carryback, there is a 3-year carryback. So it's the model year or the calendar year plus 3. So that's one. The other thing is that, you know, we've been talking about electric vehicles a lot, but to be honest with you, I find it surprising to imagine that the penetration of electric vehicles in this country in 2 years or in 3 years is going to achieve even 1%, right? Because you've been selling in markets where you have incentives from the government, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, to the manufacturers themselves, to the consumers, infrastructure, etc., and still breaking through the 2-3% factor. So I'm saying that betting a lot on electric vehicles in this country, in this country, and in a very short time, in 2 to 3 years, right, is a bit, to be honest with you, unrealistic, because it's not doable. I mean, building the infrastructure itself would take a couple of years. Getting consumer acceptance would get a couple of years at best. So putting a lot of weight on electric vehicles to achieve compliance in this very short time may not be achievable. Even if we were not to use a 0.15 divisor, even if we were to use a 0.05 divisor, right, you still have to deal with the consumer because he's the one buying the vehicle, not us, even if we put all of the incentives for you in the standard. And I'm going to talk in a slide about the factors that affect the electric vehicle uptake and electric vehicle incentives. Now, I understand, Dr. Ahmed, where you're coming from, but again, let's be realistic in this short point in time in putting the expectations on electric vehicles. I am not saying that they are not going to be an important part in achieving your compliance, but I'm saying in short term, they're probably not going to play a big role.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My name is Angham Nas from Mitsubishi Motors. I am delighted to attend this event involving SASO and the various motor vehicles manufacturers. At the moment, electric vehicles are most efficient in fuel consumption. It is therefore uplifting to learn that SASO is encouraging manufacturers to sell more electric vehicles to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I have been in contact with our technicians and they have raised some issues. Unfortunately, I am not very proficient in the technical aspect of this topic. I will therefore just present the issues with the hope that SASO can open a conversation on the matter later on. Our first concern is that the formula that SASO has presented is based on the current conventional thermal power plant. The formula, however, doesn't incorporate any incentive to encourage manufacturers to introduce their electric vehicle into the country. The conversion parameters in developed countries are a bit different from ours. The US formula takes into consideration sources for clean energy that are becoming more popular, such as solar energy. The EU doesn't calculate the CO2 emitted from electric generation plant when calculating PHEV to CO2 emission. Credit based on the volume acceleration is offered as incentive scheme. It is our opinion that the tank-to-well approach is better for calculating fuel efficiency compared to the wheel-to-tank approach suggested by SASO. KSA is the top runner in terms of CO2 control in the region. Conversion formula for the PHEV as indicated doesn't seem to match this direction when raising target fuel efficiency in 2021 and onward. Introduction of the PHEV will be mandatory. Those car makers request SASO to reconsider.
Ms. Nas, I think we've already addressed most of these comments. We've talked about how we've set. I don't know if are you done? Okay. I think we've addressed most of these comments when we're talking about the equation and where this equation stems from and why we are using this equation as opposed to using the equations applied in the US and the EU. And you have to remember that each country has different objectives, okay? So, for example, if one country says in its standard the objective is to reduce dependence on foreign oil, then it definitely has a different target than what we have in the country, and that will affect everything that is in the standard, and you have to bear that in mind, right? And so this is why we are not trying to penalize electric vehicles in any way, because I get that this is the feeling here, and that is not absolutely the point in any way. If we were producing our electricity from renewable energy, 70% of our energy was produced from renewable energy, which is coming in the next 10 years or so, right? Then the efficiency of these electric vehicles is going to be triple what it is, or more than triple what it is, what we have right now. So it may end up being even higher than in some countries. So what we are trying to do here is just to reflect the true fuel economy of these vehicles, and we are not trying to, again, we're not trying to penalize it in any way. And we are taking the local context into consideration. We are taking our objectives into consideration. Again, I understand the points that we're getting that is coming as a shock, etc. I don't know how to respond to that. I would have hoped that it would not be a shock because, you know, the standard didn't come as one-to-one. It was not exactly mirroring the EPA standard. But anyway, I understand where this is coming from. But again, we do have a standard in the next phase of a standard that we are taking into consideration future changes that we are going to have in the infrastructure, and that is going to be reflected in the parameters, and that is going to reflect a higher fuel economy on electric vehicles. I hope that addresses your inquiries.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I'm Anas Abdul Qadir from General Motors. I want to thank you for having this workshop. I just want to pick up from your earlier note regarding the point that you notice, or all of us as industry see, the slow adoption of electric vehicle in different countries around the globe, even though those countries provide so many different incentives to have this products and technology adopted in the market. And for sure, we as industry agree with that, and we see the same case would be in the kingdom, which tells us that if we don't start now to incentivize EVs, starting today, that means that we don't see a path to compliance towards 2025. If we don't start to incentivize the market to adopt the technology, that means that we'll not have enough fleet in 2025 and beyond to meet the CAFE targets, which tells us there is no path to compliance. The second point, you mentioned that let's wait 2 to 3 years to see the renewable energy production to start, and then we can have incentivized EV calculation. The question is, do we have agreement that the SASO CAFE program will align with the US calculation method in 2020 calendar year and beyond? That's a question. The last point that I would like to make, for sure, we as industry, we fully understand that SASO and SEEK don't mean to penalize EVs, but as a matter of fact, we as industry see this as a reality, because if we don't have the incentivized way of calculating EV credits, for us, we don't see any path to compliance with the CAFE program. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. First, let me say that I never said let's wait for 2 or 3 years to introduce this in the standard. As a matter of fact, you know that we have to, as I mentioned earlier, we do have to publish a draft of the standard in order to stimulate the discussion by the end of this year. So you're going to see a draft by the end of this year, and it's going to include these changes. That's one. Now, when we are talking about the incentivizing electric vehicles from now in order to have a better penetration in the future, I'm going to say that we do not see a point of incentivizing electric vehicles at a point where we are not ready to receive those electric vehicles may not be the best approach, right? Now, I know that we are doing a lot of initiatives in order to introduce these electric vehicles, but again, trying to mass force them to the consumer is not going to happen, even if we incentivize them, these electric vehicles. Now, what I'm saying, and the other point that I'm saying, that I want to say as well, is that manufacturers and the government as well have to plan ahead of time. So if you see a standard by the end of this year that has an improved situation on EVs, then I'm sure that you're going to take that into your future planning, and you're not going to plan for today, because the vehicles that you are selling this year have already been produced, or you cannot make any changes to at this point in time. So all of your considerations have to be built on future sales, and all of your compliance planning has to be also planned on future sales.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. So, as you rightly said, at this moment there is no infrastructure and full readiness for the kingdom to receive this technology, and that's why we as industry are planning in the sort of like public-private partnership to help build the infrastructure, the likes of chargers, so that we can anticipate and speed up the technology adoption. And adopting the incentivized way of calculating EVs will give us the confidence to invest in this technology and this public-private partnership. Otherwise, sort of not incentivizing the EVs, I wouldn't say penalizing, but not incentivizing them, that would put our investment plan at best in question. So what would be the point for investing in infrastructure so that the technology could be adopted if there is no incentive to introduce the technology in the kingdom?
I'm not an, I have not been in the vehicle manufacturing, to be honest. I didn't work in the vehicle manufacturing itself, but it comes to me that this actually happens in all businesses, as I understand, is that when you invest in something and plan for it, it's not to get credits in a standard, it's because you believe that it is going to sell in the future and it is going to be the future industry. So I don't think that credits in the cafe should drive a manufacturer in developing the industry or pushing a certain technology. They should only push a certain technology if they believe that this technology is going to be the path of the future. Now, if we are depending on credits that we're getting in 2 years, yes, they may not be this may not work. But if you're looking at a long term as the EV becoming a part, an important factor in the vehicle market in Saudi Arabia or in the region, then I think that a manufacturer would invest either way. Shall I?
Yes. I've got some follow-ups on that specific equation. There are 5 structural issues with it that will likely prevent it from ever being adopted in the U.S. and would like your comments on them. The first one, it uses an arithmetic average, where because these are fuel economy values, it should be using a harmonic average when you're combining the charge sustaining and charge depleting modes. The second one is it uses the vehicle footprint target, which there is no other type of calculation in the U.S. that uses the target to calculate the result that you compare back to the target. So it's kind of a circular reference. The third one is using the upstream emissions, where I can see the logic for wanting to regulate the overall the environmental picture, but the utility business is well outside of the control of any automotive manufacturer. So any regulation there should be put on the electric power generation companies and leave a standard target for the auto manufacturers to follow. The fourth structural issue, it's not range dependent. So in the U.S. currently there are 2 different ways to calculate the equivalent mileage for EVs. One uses a 50-50 weighting between charge sustaining and charge depleting mode. Then there's the alternative method that uses a utility factor that gives a higher mileage score for longer electric range. So that's the incentive to provide enough battery capacity to go 50 kilometers or 80 kilometers or 100 kilometers on battery power only for PHEVs. Without that, you only have to have enough battery capacity to get through one cycle. So basically the 16 kilometers or so on the U.S. highway cycle, and then you don't need any more battery capacity because there's no more incentive for a higher CAFE number for the manufacturer. And that ultimately hurts the consumer. So that's part of the U.S. program, is an adjustment factor for the longer the range is, the higher the CAFE score is. And then the fifth structural problem is the lack of the incentive that we've already talked about.
Can you say that again? The last point?
The lack of the incentive, the 0.15 incentive or whatever it would be. So those are kind of the 5 structural issues that I believe will prevent this equation from ever being adopted in the U.S. policy.
Okay. So when we're talking about the plug-in hybrids or the PHEVs and using the utility factor, I'm going to talk later on in the presentation that we are going to change that equation in order to take the utility factor into consideration. Though that comment has been taken into consideration, and that's going to be reflected in the standard. On the second point, when you're saying about the targets for using the targets in the equation, again, I'm not going to go back and say this is from the EPA itself, but I'm also going to say that it makes sense because when you're talking about removing emissions from the road, then these emissions have to be proportional to the vehicle that you are removing from the road. And this is why we're using the target for that year, because these emissions should be less as the efficiency of even a conventional vehicle increases. And this is why we are using the targets. On the upstream emissions, I completely understand that it is not within the manufacturer's control. This is understood, and we never said that it was the manufacturer's mistake of what we're having in the situation here. But again, the standard was put for the benefit of reducing energy consumption in the country, right? And if I am not achieving that target by putting anything there, then I have not achieved the purpose of this standard. And if this standard is not achieving that purpose, then there is no point of having it in the first place, right? And this is why we do have to use upstream emissions to make sure that we are measuring the performance correctly and that we are achieving our targets to that point. Now, regarding range dependency, I understand how that can be important to the consumer, but it is not reflective of the vehicle's efficiency directly, right? So the battery capacity could be low or could be high, but again, that would not directly affect the efficiency of the vehicle. And now that we are taking the utility factor into consideration, it would be addressed, obviously, in the PHEV. But again, we do not see how that affects the efficiency of a vehicle directly. On the 0.15 incentive, now that was come by the Department of Energy in the US and agreed with NHTSA and with the EPA, and that is very specific to the US the way I see it. So we do not believe that we need it to use the same divisor here, right? We believe that if the efficiency of the upstream in power production is improved, and it is, and you know these plans, you've heard them, right? Then it would have a direct impact, and a direct improvement would be reflected in the electric vehicle performance.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll continue, but thank you very much for the interaction. I'm very happy that we're having this, and we want to continue through the remainder of the presentation. Now, I know we've talked about something, but we did talk about this already, is that the penetration of electric vehicles in countries remains low. Now it is improving, and it is improving rather quickly at this point in time, but I don't think this is driven entirely by fuel economy standard, because there are multiple factors. I don't know if you can read this, but there are multiple factors that do affect electric vehicle introduction, electric vehicle uptake, and I'm going to talk about this rather quickly. We do have EV R&D support, and that is very important and very critical at this point in time, especially as the technology is emerging. Then electric vehicle manufacturing stimuli through tax breaks or direct incentives, etc. And then you have EV manufacturers support through providing funding, and then you have EV sales stimuli, and that is where the fuel economy standard fails, or the GHG standard fails. So we're just saying that it is a part of a complete picture that has to be taken into consideration. So if the standard does not, for example, have this divisor, or does not have the super credits, or etc., it does not mean the end for electric vehicles on the shorter term, or that the market is not going to accept the electric vehicles as a whole. Now, I understand how it is important to achieve your compliance on the longer run, but again, I'm going to go back to my point and say these points are not, or these factors are not set in stone, and they're subject to change as we introduce the next phase. But then you have then a EV-related service support. But the very important part as well is the consumer side, which is the demand side. Now, we've talked a lot about the supply side, but there is also the demand side part. Is the consumer going to accept these vehicles? Now, in the US and the EU, in Japan, in China, a lot of incentives are provided to consumers. But even with these incentives, some consumers are not taking these vehicles, right? And we do have, actually, I do have another slide that I would like to share with you on the when we're comparing, when we're measuring the importance of the incentives. In the case, in the case of, and you have in front of you the case of Denmark. This is the case of multiple countries. And in Denmark, when they stop providing incentives, right, you see that in one quarter, or the tax breaks on electric vehicles, in one quarter, how the sales of EV regressed significantly. So even with all of the incentives that you can provide in the standard, there is no guarantee that the manufacturer is not going to sell unless they ensure, right, that we do have the whole supply chain into consideration, or the demand into consideration. And well, I'm sure that you are familiar with the case in Georgia as well, at least for the US manufacturers, where the sales of Tesla plummeted significantly after the $5,000 tax break was removed from there. So there are other factors to play into consideration, and part of the consumer acceptance also goes with the electric vehicle price. Now, as electric vehicle prices drop, we are sure that consumers are going to be more accepting of these vehicles. But for a consumer in Saudi Arabia right now, even if the government would provide, were to provide an incentive to the consumer itself, given the consideration, the lack of knowledge on the electric vehicles that we have right now, it is very likely that the uptake of electric vehicles will remain low for the next few years on the shorter run. So what we're saying is, again, is that the standard is one piece in a bigger puzzle. So we should not look at the standard as the only one hindering the sales, or as it is a reason for hindering the sales of electric vehicles. No. By the way, the country is working on a whole ecosystem in order for the introduction of electric vehicles in the country. And you're going to see and hear that soon. But we should not only look at the standard as the only reason for not introducing electric vehicles. And this standard is also going to change in the future as we improve the efficiency of our upstream operations. All right. So this is the point that was mentioned. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. But this is the point that was mentioned on the PHEVs. And we did mention that we would calculate the efficiency of PHEVs based on 50 of the gasoline engine and 50% on the electric motor. But now we are changing that to use the same utility factors that are applied in the US. I don't think I need to explain that. I believe that you're quite familiar with that. And because we felt, and we actually did get comments, and these comments we agree with 100%, is that we may be penalizing PHEVs. We may be penalizing PHEVs that have a larger battery capacity than PHEVs that have a smaller battery capacity. And so we've decided that we're going to use the utility factor equation in order to take into consideration the battery capacity of plug-in hybrids into consideration. Although when we did our analysis, I'm just going to share this with you real quick, and these are three, and this is an example of 3 cars that are sold in the US, because we do not have a lot of plug-in hybrids sold here. We did not see much of a difference in terms of performance, with the exception of a few models. But nonetheless, this is the correct methodology that should have been used, and we're going to reflect that in the standard. Okay. Oh, problem with dealing 2 computers is a bit difficult. Okay. So again, let me say that again. So we did do three examples on that, and these are high-selling models in the US, and we did not see much of a difference with the exception of Model B, as you can see. But most of the models won't see a significant difference between the 2 methodologies. But as I've mentioned earlier, it is the right methodology. It is scientifically the correct way to do this calculation, and so we are switching back to the utility factors.
Got a quick question. Will it be the utility factor calculation for everything, or will it be the utility factor or the 50-50 split? Because that's the way the US is set up now, is you can choose either.
No, we're going to be using the utility factor. Well, I'm willing to discuss this with you, but we were planning to use the utility factor for everything.
Right, the utility factor benefits the longer range, and that's why when you look at the data on existing vehicles in the market, the utility factor method hasn't been around very long, so most of them aren't designed to take full advantage of that. That's where most of the future vehicles are coming. But for current ones on the market, it would be penalizing them a bit. So perhaps a phase-in approach or something to be able to still allow either method in the first few years would be beneficial.
Okay, I'll definitely take that into consideration. I'll come back to you on that. From here, I'm going to be moving to the credit system. So if you do have any questions about EVs, the fuel economy equivalency, any comments, please feel free to share them with us. I cannot hear you at all. Can we have a mic?
My name is Ahmed Khalifa, and I work with Peugeot. Just a question on the work that's been done here. Firstly, thank you so much. It's the first time I attend this workshop, and I've already gained a lot of good knowledge about the topic. In regards to other countries or other countries in the region, is the work you're doing coordinated with other regulatory bodies across the region or not? We just want to understand that will it be homogeneous across other countries or not, with whatever. I know we're focusing a lot on Saudi Arabia, but I just want to talk about if it's going to be coordinated with other country or not. and other regulatory bodies?
We thank you very much, Ahmed, and welcome to SASO and Saudi Arabia. I don't know if this is your first time here or not, but we do coordinate with GSO on this, on the methodology that we are using, but we do not coordinate with other bodies directly. So we're not coordinating with ESMA, for example, or etc. But we do coordinate with GSO, and we assume that GSO contacts others and shares their views. But I would doubt that the same methodology that we're using here would be used in other GCC countries. Again, because you're using upstream emissions, etc., it can be very specific to a country. So I would doubt that it would be the same methodology used there, though I don't know what they're planning.
Thanks.
If you don't have any questions, because we're switching to another subject, I hope it's okay if we take a 5-minute break, just 5 minutes, and we'll come back.
Assalamu alaikum. We'll take a break for 15 minutes. Please, the refreshments are outside, the coffee, the tea. So please help yourself, and we shall be back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Also, attention please, for the people who have not registered their name when they walked in, please, the registration desk is outside, so we could send you the material and stay in contact with you. Please register your name if you didn't. If you did, thank you.
شيل الزرع وشيل كل حاجة. When we select the, no touch panel.
لا تجيب العيد اقول يعني خلي كل شيء شغال لا يفصل شيء. طيب بسم الله.
monitor, no? Working. Monitor not working.
باكج بشكل
I think from touch panel.
لا ما اشتغل سوري
From the touch panel. Select. Would you like to test from there?
نو نو نو
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم مرة ثانية في مقر الهيئة السعودية للمواصفات والمقاييس والجودة لاستكمال فعاليات ورشة عمل الخاصة بمناقشة ملاحظات مصنع السيارات حول الإضافات الخاصة بكل من المواصفة القياسية 2847 والمواصفة القياسية 2864، حيث سيستمر النقاش حول الملاحظات على نظام إصدار بطاقات اقتصاد الوقود. شكرا لكم ونتمنى لكم وقتا ممتعا مع هذه المناقشة. تفضل.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to continue and we're going to move to the second part where we're going to talk about the credit systems and the credit system and the comments that we've received on that. Okay, so the first comment was talking about, by the way, I'm going to share this presentation with everyone who has attended here today, so I hope that you've registered. As long as you're registered, you're going to receive a copy of this presentation. But one of the comments that we had received discussed that we do have a dual or 2 times rounding process when calculating the average and target fuel economy for automotive manufacturers. Now, the comment was that we do that the manufacturers report the fuel economy on a 1 decimal point, and then after the calculation is done, we do another time of rounding when we are calculating. So when we're doing when we do the average altogether, we do rounding when we are calculating the targets for the credit, when we're calculating the credits. And some of the manufacturers argue that this 2-time rounding is unnecessary, since this rounding is not necessary since they're reporting in one value, then the averages should not be rounded, and then the calculation should not be done with the credit calculation shouldn't be done with the rounding of the target or actual fuel economy. When we looked at this, and when we replicated the calculations for multiple manufacturers, then you have to bear in mind, I'm going to explain the rationale of why we're using this, but first you have to bear in mind is that this rounding is beneficial to some manufacturers and is not beneficial to others. It can be detrimental to others, right? Some do lose credits and some do gain credits as a result of that, and we do understand that. But the rationale for using a 1 credit system is that in the equation, we do not want to end up with partial credits. I don't want to end up with a part of the credit, so I don't want to end up with 10,000.3 credits. And this is why we do round the fuel economy to 1 decimal point, and we multiply by a factor of 10 in the equation times the sales, and then you end up with the total credits for the manufacturer, and this is why we do the rounding. Now, even if we were to remove that, right, some manufacturers would be losing credits, and this is the methodology that we have been using from the beginning. So we'd rather keep this methodology as is, because we have been going with it for 2 years now, and going back is going to affect some manufacturers in a negative way. Yeah.
I think rounding on rounding, I'm not understanding what you said about partial credits, but I think that's a slightly different issue, is not mathematically a pure way of doing it. And as in our job performance, it is hard to forecast because there's always those few grey imports that can trip the number over unnecessarily. So I do ask, and I'm not I'm not going to quietly on this one, Mohammed, because I think it's not a fair process, okay? There will be winners and losers, of course, but we'll all be able to forecast our own numbers, which matters to us.
Right. Now, I understand that these...
Can we vote on it?
Sorry?
Could we vote on it?
I'm not married to the idea of rounding. If nobody opposes to the idea of rounding, starting 2018, we do not need to round anymore at the when we're calculating the credits, unless we do have any opposition. Anyway, I don't think that's a fair vote anyway, because not everybody is present here. So I'm going to send an email on that point to all manufacturers or through SASO, and if we do not receive any opposition, we will change the calculation methodology starting 2018, and I'm actually going to consider changing 2017 as well. Going back and changing 2017 when we input the credits into the system. So we do not have any emotional attachment to this methodology in any way. Okay? So I really didn't want to go through this, but the more important question than explaining how to conduct a transfer from one manufacturer to other is that, did you find the user manual that was shared not clear? Did it have any gaps? Were you not able to use it, etc.? I see someone smiling, so maybe you want to comment on that? Right. So the user manual was okay? Didn't you have any comments on it? Do we need to clarify any points in the system in any point in any way? All right. Then I'm going to go through the process. One of the manufacturers requested a clarification on how to conduct a manufacturer-to-manufacturer transfer, and this transfer is done through the system, so it has to be initiated by the sender. So obviously the two manufacturers would have to discuss the transfer, the terms of the transfer offline on their own, and then after they agree on the terms of this transfer, the sender would initiate this request by selecting which category they want to send the credits from, the amount of credits they want to send, and the other manufacturer they'd like to send the credits to, and then they initiate the request. This request would go to the receiver, and on the receiver's dashboard, they can go into a tab that says received credits, and once they go into the received credits, they will see this workflow, let's call it, this workflow where they're receiving comments where they're receiving credits from another manufacturer and the conversion of these credits. Now the receiver would have to select where they want to use these credits. Do they want to use them in the PC category or in the light truck category? And then the system would do the conversion in accordance with the equation that is in 2864, in SASO 2864, where it would take the target of the sender, the target of the receiver, the actual of the sender, the actual receiver, etc., and do this conversion. After that is done, it would go to the approver, and if all looks fine, it would approve, and the exchange would happen. I'm not sure if this is clear or if I need further clarification, but it seemed, to be honest, quite intuitive for me in the first place. But if there are if there's anything that's not clear, please let us know, and we'll clarify.
So I think this is clear, but I think the challenge is, how do you know who's got credits and who doesn't have credits, and
how do you know the credits? Who owns the credits?
No, who owns the credit? Yeah, so which manufacturers have credits that they might be able to trade? That process is, this looks, I've looked on this, I haven't done it obviously, but I'm familiar with how it looks, and it looks fairly self-explanatory. But the actual if you're close to being non-compliant, or you're maybe non-compliant in 2020, so you might want to buy credits now, how do you can identify a car company that is likely to have credits that they were willing to sell?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. In US we publish. Yeah. No, before you share your point, Dr. Ahmed, allow me to just clarify something. In the amendment, we've added a clause that you have seen, and we wanted to make sure that nobody opposed to sharing this information. But now, the information starting on from this mid-year, information on the credits for each manufacturer, targets, actual fuel economy is going to be published on the portal. So you're going to be able to see the performance for each manufacturer. I know that you've shared this comment with us before, and this is why we've included it as an amendment in the standard, because we do need some legal backing in order to publish this information. And we've done that, and we did not receive any comments on that clause in the standard. And so you're going to be able to see this information on the portal. All right? All right. So moving to the next point. Some manufacturers, I just have to explain the vehicle exemption process, at least for the emergency vehicle exemption process. Now, we have to verify, obviously, that the vehicles that are planning that, when the manufacturer is requesting an exemption of emergency vehicles, we have to verify that these vehicles are actually intended for that use. And this is why we ask for the contract or a copy of the contract between the manufacturer or their dealer or whomever is selling these vehicles on their behalf and the government agency. Now, there are some government agencies which are specialized in security and safety and law enforcement, like police, traffic police, etc. When there are also other government entities that have nothing to do with law enfortment, like Ministry of Education, Ministry of Municipalities and Rural Affairs, these have nothing to do. These would not be exempt because these vehicles are not intended for law enforcement. They are not intended for security purposes. Now, I know that we've received some comments from the manufacturers claiming that we asked them what these vehicles are going to be used for. And honestly, I do not recall that we've ever asked that. But if that is the case, we shouldn't have, if we had asked, then we shouldn't have asked that. And I assure you that we will never ask that. And it is only important for us to have the contract, and through our own knowledge and communication with the government agencies, we can tell if these vehicles are used for emergency and law enforcement or not. But we will never ask the manufacturer what these vehicles are used for. It would be an unreasonable request. Okay? I'm moving now to the portals, and there are a lot of comments on the portal. First, before we talk about the portal, allow me to apologize on SASO and SEEK behalf for the downtime, the extended downtime that you saw earlier this year. This should not have happened, but unfortunately with technology we are prone to have such incidents. We were not happy to see it extend that long, and we assure you that we are doing every measure possible for this not to reoccur again. As a matter of fact, His Excellency, the Governor himself, is monitoring this process, because this is not the only portal we have. We do have multiple portals for vehicles, for tires, for electrical appliances, etc. So it is very important for us to ensure a smooth process in all of that. Now, understand that this site kind of incident should not have happened, but again, we cannot control everything, and unfortunately it did happen. But we can only assure you that we are doing our utmost effort so that this does not recur again. Okay? Now, moving on to the comments that we have received, the first thing is on the the first thing is on AC technology, and in the amendment that we have issued, we've received a lot of comments about AC-17 test, and that AC-17 test is not a very good measure with the current status, is not a good measure of the AC performance, etc. And so we should not limit the testing to AC-17 testing. In addition, manufacturers have mentioned that since we do not have a good or a very clear testing methodology in order to measure the actual performance of these vehicles, and we should allow the manufacturers to obtain the full credit from the AC technology until a time where we do have a better testing methodology for the AC credits. And this is what we have done in the amendment. Now, we are allowing the manufacturer to prove that we're just asking the manufacturer to prove that the technology exists. If the AC technology exists, then the manufacturer will get the full credit for this technology for the for the third and fourth enforcement cycle for 2018 and 2019, because we do forecast that by 2020 that there will be a testing methodology that measures AC performance. Now, if we find out that there isn't still a methodology that measures the performance of ACs properly, then we'll definitely have to look into an alternative solution. But for the time being, manufacturers are eligible for the full credit once they prove that the technology exists on a vehicle. Also, if the vehicle is offered in the Saudi market and then offered in the US market, a report that has been supplied to the US EPA would also be acceptable as a proof of the technology existence on the vehicle.
So the deadline for...
Do you mind? But I just don't know. Can you please...
Apologies. Natalie Thompson from Mercedes-Benz Cars Middle East. Again, it's the first time I attend a workshop like this. And apologies if this is a stupid question, but in terms of deadline, to enter the credits into the supply plan, the deadline is next year, applying for this year. But when do we need to apply for the AC and OC credits in the system? What's the deadline for that?
Okay, so let me clarify on that. Now, the report, with the reports for the system closure is in December of 2018. So a manufacturer may register a technology at any point in time throughout the cycle. They do not have to input all of the technologies or claim the credits from the beginning of the year or at the time that they're providing the supply plan, because we understand that some vehicles, are in the planning phase and that would not have been produced at the time. And so we're allowing the manufacturer until the end of the cycle to register a technology and include this technology in their supply plan. Now, I would not urge any manufacturer to do that, because for you to include the technology, it would have to be reviewed by the team, and that does take 3 to 5 business days. So I would urge the manufacturers to introduce the technology in the system as soon as possible. But once the technology is in the system and registered, a manufacturer may assign it to any vehicle at any point in time until December 31st of that enforcement cycle. Now, as agreed with the manufacturers, there are also the other change that is going to be done on the supply plans that we're on the year-end sales provision. They are also allowed to extend that until the end of February, so you don't have to submit everything by December 31st, but everything has to be received by the end of February. And I understand that the manufacturers wanted to extend that until March, but unfortunately we are obliged to provide our reports to our management by the end of April. And if we allow the manufacturers to delay that much, it won't give us enough time. But I've digressed a little bit, but I hope that answered your question.
To follow up on the 2020 and beyond for submitting the AC-17 test, is that intended to be the exact AC-17 test that we run for the U.S.? Just because we have a higher level for the credits here, adjusting for local usage, but if we run the AC-17 test as described, it won't demonstrate necessarily that improvement because it's set up for a different usage case. So just, can you verify that it is the AC-17 test as we run in the U.S. without any other modification?
Well, as the plan as it stands is yes, we're going to use the AC-17 test. But if you do have any comments on that, or you believe that this is not a good measure of the AC performance in this country or anywhere else, then we are willing to get your comments, and we're definitely going to consider them.
Yes, well, it's not a good test, but it's something that we will have to do in the U.S., so the data will be there. So it's not really something really to fight it, but it is just, everyone understands it's not a good test, and the committees have been working for a long time to come up with a better test, but there is not one today.
Yes. No, I understand. I understand that this is not the best test to use to measure the AC performance. But again, we have to use one methodology in order to measure the performance. And so far, it seems that 8017 test is the one accepted in the US, and this is what we have to go with for the time being, unless the manufacturers with the SAE manage to come with a better methodology in the next year or two. Okay. I actually do have a question, and hopefully you can help me answer that. One of the comments that I've received is that doing AC tests, now, okay, first let me give some background, is that we plan to work with the manufacturers to test the vehicles in third-party laboratory, all right? We're not going to test a lot of vehicles, but we want to test sample vehicles in third-party laboratory. The third-party laboratory can be in the next geography where the manufacturing facility is, to ease the transfer back and forth for the manufacturers. But one of the comments that I have received is that AC testing cannot be done in a third-party facility. Now, I understand that we're going to use a proprietary method to test, or you're going to use some other methodology to prove that the technology exists, because you do not need to absolutely test it, you just need to prove that it exists. But what is the problem of having a third-party check on the existence of this technology? Because one of the comments that we've received is that, no, we cannot do third-party check on the AC technology.
Sorry, Mohammed, do you mean that the third party can't check that technology exists on a vehicle, or are you saying that you can't check the credit that the manufacturers are?
No. Obviously, we all know that the credit, at least for this year and next year, we're not going to measure the performance. Yeah. So it's just a check that the technology exists on the vehicle.
Yeah, I think it depends what the technology is, but I think we had provided, didn't the APC provide a guidance on some kind of visual checks for some of the technologies? So I think some will be a challenge, and some may not be, right, as I would characterize it. So did you not receive, because we wrote an input on that, right?
No. By the way, your voice is cutting off.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm just keeping the microphone still and moving my head, right? So yes. So I think the manufacturers can provide you input as to which ones can be done visually or through a simple test, but some I think will be a challenge. So I think it depends on what you're looking for, Mohammed, yeah?
Okay.
But I think we provided some input on that. If we haven't, I apologize, because we've definitely prepared something for you on this, yeah?
Okay, it's just that it's just that we want to know if there is a barrier to a third party being able to check on the existence of the technology. And you're saying that sometimes a third party would not be able to tell if the technology exists or not, except with some, with extensive testing. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's the case for some of these technologies are software features that to be able to demonstrate if they're there and the functionality, you have to turn them on and off. So if the third party knows how to get into the ECU and turn off functions, then they in theory could do it. But it can be fairly extensive, and those are the barriers that can make it hard for a third party to do.
Okay. Very good. We get that point. All right. So we'll move on now. One of the comments that we've received, and to be honest, I'm not going to go through this, but unless you do have, if you feel it is necessary. But I've got some comments asking manufacturers asking to explain how technologies are entered into the system, or AC technologies are entered into the system. And I believe that in the user manual that we've clarified the methodology on how AC technologies are entered, and we did receive some requests for that matter. So it does. We're quite sure that the system works because we did receive some requests. But if any manufacturer is having a challenge introducing these technologies, I'd rather address that in an isolated manner through email or through a phone conversation, rather than doing it in this workshop. If the user manual is not clear in any way, please feel free to share your feedback with us right now, or if you want to share it through an email, we're also willing to accept that, and we're willing to clarify. If you do need examples on how the system works in video, we can work on that, and we can share that with you as well. But it does seem that it is rather simple. I mean, it's a drop-down list. You go into AC technology, you add an AC technology through clicking the plus. You choose a technology from the drop-down list, and this drop-down list matches the list of technologies that is in the standard, and it also defines the maximum credit that is allowed for each technology that you may claim at this point in time, in 2018, 2019, and then you just need to attach whatever documentation you have to prove that the technology exists, whether it's testing, a picture, that the technology exists, etc. And then we will review it. And if you do have any questions on the technology, we'll come back to you. If the proof that you provided is not enough for us, we'll come back to you on that. But it rather seems as if it's a simple flow process. But if you do have any comments or questions on that, we are more than willing to provide you with all the support that is needed. Okay. Yes. One more thing that this may be the challenging part, is that after there is a two-step process. So the manufacturer would have to register the technology, and after the technology is registered, the manufacturer will include it in the supply plan. Now, how to include it in the supply plan? Now, the system is going to give the manufacturer a code for each technology that they are registering, and they just have to copy and paste that code in the AC or OC column that they have. The same process goes for AC and OC, but the system is going to give you a code, and you just have to copy that code and paste it in the column that you have in the supply plan. You can do it when you are uploading. You can do it when you are uploading the supply plan, or you can do it even after the supply plan has been uploaded. So in this process here, you can do it when you are uploading the supply plan, or you can do it even afterwards. So after you've uploaded the supply plan, there is an update. There is when you want to go to do your mid-year or year-end updates, you're going to have these columns available, and you can just copy and put your codes in there. So you don't have to do it at the beginning, but you can do it at the beginning if you wish, and you can do it afterwards. And you can also change the technologies. If you put something and you want to change it, you can do that as well. Right. I think I've talked about the portal downtime, but I think it's the request that we've received from the manufacturers to inform them of the planned and unplanned downtime. I think that's only fair. And the manufacturers need to know. It's part of the process in their production. It's part of their production process, and they need to know if the portal is going down or not. Now, planned downtime usually happens on Sunday morning when the portal is least used. Okay, so it doesn't usually happen any other time. But we do happen to have some unplanned shutdowns, and the unfortunate event happens because we're connected to multiple portals. One of the portals that we're connected to is the Sadat portal, okay? And whenever they do a maintenance there, we do have some issues, even when connecting back. Even if this maintenance takes an hour, sometimes even when connecting back, it doesn't work because they've changed something, and I'm not an IT guy, so IT guy is supposed to be here, but he left me. So but we do have some issues happening. Now, I'm not trying to justify that in any way, okay? You committed to provide the information, issuing the labels and filling the information, and we commit to provide the service that helps you in doing that. And we are working for that not to happen. From now on, anytime there is a planned shutdown or downtime, you're going to be informed ahead of time. Every time we do have an unplanned downtime, I cannot tell you ahead of time, but I will tell you as soon as it happens, okay? In terms of the 10-day downtime, I'll comfortably call it an isolated incident. I am not happy that it happened. Nobody is happy that it happened, but we assure you that something like this is not going to happen again. And should it happen again, we assure you that we're going to find an alternative solution. Every time we know that the portal is going to go, well, we can't tell, but every time the portal goes for more than 48 hours of unplanned shutdown that the manufacturers are not knowledgeable of ahead of time and enough time for them to make their planning, we will find an alternative solution. As a matter of fact, if the issue that we had in the system were not solved, was not going to be solved in the next 8 hours, though it took 10 days, but anyway, in the last 8 hours, we were planning to bypass the whole payment system and make labels free of charge until we solve the problem. And if that's what it takes in the future, if the downtime is extended, then that's what we're going to do, because this is not about the money, it's about having a good process, right? And so, again, I have to apologize on behalf of the team here for this incident happening, but we assure you that it's not going to happen again. I've received one comment with the manufacturer asking that we have a user manual for the FE label portal. If that is necessary, then we can certainly work on that and provide the manufacturers with that. We'll provide them with the features in the system. But I do understand that there are some shortcomings in the system in terms of the features. I wouldn't call them shortcomings, but it could be improved with the additional features. And we did receive from the manufacturers a feature list that they'd like to have in the system. And we're going to start working on it directly after this workshop. But given that we have the Ramadan and Eid vacation coming, I think that we won't be able to produce anything before the end of August, and I hope that's okay. But the system will remain functional. But these additional functionalities are not going to be available until 2 months or so from now. Okay. One of the comments that we're receiving is that we have a new service. We're working with a new service with Sadat in order to minimize failures. Now I understand that sometimes the manufacturers try to produce a bill, and then the bill comes empty with no invoice number. And that is unfortunate, and we do know that this has occurred quite frequently in the recent time, and we're not absent-minded. We do know that this is happening, but we are working with them right now in order to improve this. So this is one of the things that we're working to improve. The utility for removing unwanted applications, one of the features that were requested, that is also going to be improved. This is going to be included. We're going to allow the manufacturers to delete the old requests that are unnecessary. Okay. Now, to my knowledge, the only issue that we've been having with the invoices is that when the invoice is issued, is that it comes out empty, no invoice number. You get the invoice, but you do not get a number. Is there any other issue that other than that?
The solution for it is not working.
Yeah, sorry? Solution for it is not working.
The solution to regenerate the invoice number is not working.
That's also not working.
Yeah, so you keep repeating the same thing 10 times, and you end up with nothing again. So the root cause is not really
understood.
defined.
So. No, understood. By the way, the whole IT team is here, and they're listening to this, and I'm sure that they're going to take the necessary corrective actions, because obviously this is not sustainable, and we do understand. So we're going to work on that. We're going to monitor the improvement, and we're going to provide you with the updates as they happen. Sure.
Regarding to incident that may occur in Sadat process or in payment process. So I think we don't have any issue till this moment. If you have any case, we are more than welcome to deal with these cases. Yes, we have a call center here in SASO. Also, we have our email info@saso.gov.sa. We deal with our customer to respect all the services that SASO provided to them. Sometimes we may face an issue with Sadat itself. So Sadat, it's another payment gateway. So what we will do, we will try to make a high pressure on them to accelerate. Also, we have another another communication channel. Once we have make sure by phone or by email that the payment has been or the fees has been paid by the customer, we accelerate the process. So we'll change the payment status for any request, either coming from SEEK department or even from registration department inside SASO.
All right, thank you very much, Sari. I'm going to go, because I'm going to go through a list of requests. I'm going to address them real quickly, but if you do have any comments on any of those requests, just please let me know. Manufacturers have been asking for an alternative way to pay to pay instead of the Sadat system that we have right now. I would like to say yes, but unfortunately we cannot, because we have been mandated by the Ministry of Finance, or government agencies have been mandated by the Ministry of Finance to use the Sadat system in order to pay for all fees. And this is why we have to use the Sadat system, though we do have some issues in the connectivity, but our hands are sort of tied on this. The possibility of entering multiple CCRs, my understanding and from my personal testing is that this already exists in the system. If it is not working, again, please let us know and we'll fix that. You don't have a... Just 1 second, please. We need a mic.
Sorry, I had a comment that it doesn't work, that even when you declare 2 CCR numbers and you want to regenerate, it still generates for 1 CCR. So that was a reoccurring issue, at least with the teams in Peugeot and France.
I'll just ask you to say that again.
Sorry, so even when you declare multiple CCRs in the system,
yes,
the bill is generated only with 1 CCR.
Okay.
And it was a reoccurring issue with our teams in Peugeot and France.
I see. So you enter multiple CCRs in the request, and then you request the system to issue your labels or issue the invoice, and it issues an invoice for just one of the CCRs and not the others.
Exactly. Yes.
All right.
I have.
I think in the vehicle verification part, when you enter multiple CCR, you will get a CCR, get an invoice with the number of CCR you have. If you have, for example, 3, it will be 15,000 Saudi riyal. In the label, it's actually a common label. That's why you have only 1. So.
But in the bill, it's only 1. It only appears as 1.
For which invoice? The first one or the second one? The verification of the vehicle or the label?
It's on the verification part.
The verification label, it has to be 2. So you get lucky. That's all. You pay only 5,000 for 10,000 bill. That's good. That's better.
May I ask you to do something for me, please?
Yeah.
Do you mind sending an email with your specific situation to us, and I assure you that we'll respond to you as soon as possible.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
My name is Ala Saad, BMW, and regarding this topic, I would like to know for which conditions it's allowed to use the multiple CCR.
It's not like you're using the mic at all. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry again. My name is Ala Saad. I'm from BMW. And my question is for this issue, for which conditions it's allowed to use the multiple CCR?
It is okay. When you have 2 vehicles, okay, that have the exact same specifications in terms of engine size, in terms of transmission, in terms of obviously fuel economy, and all of the other aspects or all of the other fields that are filled in the system, then you are allowed to use multiple CCRs. We understand that with the GSO introducing the VIN number into the certificate, then you do have sometimes you do have multiple vehicles with the same, or sometimes you do have multiple vehicles with the same
locations,
yes, with the
like
same operational specifications, yes, but different
different like different production locations and different, yes, seat configurations. Regarding these points, I would like also to share.
Let me qualify something. The origin of the vehicle or the manufacturing of the vehicle is one of the fields that you have to enter. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Then you cannot use multiple CCRs when one of the fields is different.
Okay. Yes, understood. Thank you very much.
All right. I think we've addressed the ability to delete unwanted applications, so that we addressed. Have a single payment application including labels. So instead of having this two-step approach of applying and then having to go and do the payment afterwards, and I understand, it does not seem necessary, and we're going to work on streamlining the process so that once a manufacturer applies for the label, then they get the label directly in one step rather than having this two-step approach. Yet we do have to keep this, so we're going to have the option of both, so the manufacturer would have to choose, but I do have to discuss with the IT team on how to do that. But we do have to keep the two processes, because we do have sometimes some importers that need labels, and we do not want these importers to enter the information themselves. Okay? Yeah.
Sorry. When you manufacturer need another label, which they have to go, we don't have to go through the verification process. The label come out without, when you scan the QR, you find no CCR number, and that's a problem. So generating a label without the verification, without going through the whole thing again, it will create problem, which I don't know what to do with the label now. I have a label that has no CCR number.
No, but this, Dr. Ahmed, is a very important point. You're saying that if the label is generated through, when the label is generating, sometimes the CCR does not show on the QR code?
No, let's say as I finish up vehicles, then I need another label to generate. So I'm not going to go, because already the vehicle has the CCR number, I went through a process, but I have to generate another label now. So I went to the second, the portal for the label only, and generate the label. I put the information, everything is fine, including the CCR number, but the label coming out, the image come out. When I scan it again, I find there is a QR. I scan this QR, there is no CCR number. All the information is there, but no CCR number. So I did not do anything with the label. I just want to bring it up to what's the second part of, if I want to generate label again, how is this going to be? I cannot put it in a vehicle because it does not have a CCR number. I have a sample. So.
Yeah, yes, well, because I'm finding it difficult to visualize the situation.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Make sure that the step here is make sure that it generates again the CCR number.
Right. If you can share an example of this, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Okay. One of the comments that we've received is that we modify the portal. Now, in the first process, the vehicle's technical information is entered, the name, etc., and then the label is generated, but then the manufacturer would have to issue the label. And in the issuing process, they do have to enter the fuel type, whether it's gasoline, electric, diesel, etc. And sorry, not that. But they have to define, when it's gasoline, they have to define if it's gasoline 91 or gasoline 95. And we've received requests that we do not, that this process should be in the label generation part, not in the label issuance part. And then we're going to modify the label to address this as well. So all of the information entry will be at the label generation part, and at the label issuance part, this is not going to show up. Now, I have to mention something on that point, on the gasoline 91, 95 situation, is that we've been seeing a lot of discrepancy in what's on the manual and what's on the label. And I thought that we had an agreement with the manufacturers that what's on the manual has to be representative on the, or has to be represented on the label. Otherwise, it's going to cause us issue with the it's going to cause us issue with the consumers, and it's going to cause us issues with the dealers, because the consumers do compare. Consumers are smart enough to be able to check what's on the label and and they will compare. And this has been consuming, by the way, a lot of our time, these issues that are recurring. Now, we do not want to penalize manufacturers. As a matter of fact, we want this to be a streamlined flow that we do not have to check every now and then and make sure that it's happening. So I'm going to request you kindly that you make sure that the gasoline type that is on the label matches the exact type that is in the manual, please. Otherwise, we're going to keep on having issues. And Mike, my colleague here is coming.
Hi, it's Mark Carson from Renault. When we've got more than one type of gasoline, because on our flaps it says 91, 95, so we can add two. But the other question that I will bring back, which is probably comes back to another point, is fuel quality. Some cases 91, it may say 91. What is delivered is not 91, and we have engine problems with running issues. So we tend to go for us, we always tend to go for 95, even though our flap, when you open it, shows 91, 95. What is your feeling on that?
No. The thing is that if a vehicle is designed to use two types of fuels, then we'd ask the manufacturer to include either the minimum in both or the manufacturer's recommended octane number on both. So as long as they're consistent, we understand. That's the point, just to maintain consistency. Now, on the second issue that you've mentioned, on the octane delivered in gas stations, if that's actually not reflective of the number that is mentioned on the gas stations, though I'm sure that the Ministry of Commerce and Investment does take samples, but if this case is recurring and you see it happening, then please share it with us, because I can definitely discuss this with the Ministry of Energy, and this needs to be resolved. I mean, we cannot create an alternative solution for an infrastructural problem. If we have an infrastructural problem, then we need to fix it. Okay. The ability to, I know that these are going to sound a bit silly compared to the comments that we mentioned earlier, but ability to correct erroneous input data. Now we're allowing the manufacturers to submit. We will update the portal so that the manufacturers, when they submit their application but did not pay yet, then they can go back and fix the application and resubmit again. An application that has been submitted cannot be corrected from the manufacturer themselves. It has to be either returned to the manufacturer from the approver, or the request would have to be deleted and a replacement would have to be included. The second comment is add a pull-down selection feature for kilometer or kilometer-liter equivalent. Well, the whole portal is changing. You're going to see a new portal for the labels, and it's going to have two new options for PHEVs and EVs, and even the shape of the label is going to change a little bit. But the size is not going to change, but only small changes here and there. I know that the important part for the manufacturers is that about the tags on the top are not changed. The colors, the color coding, and the levels do not change, and these are not going to change. Even the dimensions of the boxes are not going to change, except of 1 or 2, as you can show, but 1 millimeter. So nothing significant here. It's just that to enable the consumer, actually you've seen the labels, the standards out. So it's only for the consumer to be able to distinguish between the different labels. But then the system is going to be available soon, and by selecting PHEV or EV, it's going to change the parameters that the manufacturer completes in the form. Some manufacturers have been having difficulty in matching the Arabic names with the English names when they pick a vehicle from a drop-down list. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on matching the Arabic and English names, so that once the English name is mentioned and when it exists in our database, the corresponding Arabic name is going to appear right away. Okay. One of the comments that we've received, and we've received quite multiple times, is that we have the older requests on top and the newer requests on the bottom, and it is rather difficult for the manufacturers to reach the newer requests we were adding a sorting feature, and we're also going to allow the deletion of all the requests, so that should hopefully ease these issues. Okay, adding the functionality save as draft option. We do not feel this is necessary because once you submit and do not pay, this is sort of a draft, and you can modify it. So we do not need a draft per se. Increasing the character limit, yes, we will work on increasing the character limits, and if the name does not fit in any single line, we'll make it in 2 lines. But we still, the maximum amount of characters we can include is 35 to 40, so we cannot expand beyond that. So we cannot leave it completely open. Some issues have been faced when trying to export reports on Excel, and we're working actually right now in solving this pagination issues, the pagination issues in the Excel fields, and hopefully you're going to be able to download the reports clearly. So we're working on correcting that. This I think we addressed on the user manual, but I have to go back because I did not get any comments on that. You need it? Good. We'll work on that because we do not want to put the effort and then nobody would use it. But we'll create it. Fine. A comment that we received on the difference between fuel type electric plus petrol and then under fuel type. Anyway, these whole fields for the fuel part are going to change for the electric part because once we introduce the PHEV and the EV, these are going to change. But the original intention for petrol plus electric is for PHEVs basically, and the hybrid is just the conventional hybrid with no plug. Okay. In some cases, multiple appearances of models under category added vehicles and requested labels. We will check on that, but I didn't quite understand what was meant by that. Did we mean that the model existed twice in the added label and in the requested label? Anyone who has been facing this issue can please clarify this? Yeah.
In the way when I request, when I enter my request, vehicle request, and pay for it, then the vehicle is approved. Then it will come under the category added vehicles. And then when I request a label and pay, then it will move to the requested labels, but stay under the category added vehicles.
All right, I understand the situation. We'll check on that. All right. By the way,
I will share with you a screenshot.
All right.
Afterwards.
Very well. By the way, my colleague Sari has been mentioned that if manufacturers have been having issues with the portal and with the usability, then we could hold another workshop where we discuss the portal usability. We go through it step by step, try to resolve all of the issues that you have. If this sounds like an acceptable idea and it would be beneficial, then we could certainly arrange such a thing, and we could have another workshop for the portal itself where we go through all of the functionality.
It will be a good opportunity from our side.
Okay, very well. Then we will arrange for something like that, and we'll send an invitation soon. No. One of the issues that we've been having is that not finding the names in the drop-down list. We're gonna work with that. One of the comments that we've received is that changing the label, instead of having the label in label.pdf or JPEG or zip or whatever, then we should change it to the application number so that it becomes easier for the manufacturers to identify these labels, and we're definitely going to make this change so that the manufacturer has application number dot the extension. The system bug leaving variant in the added vehicle and requested label sections. This was not quite clear to us in terms of the comment because we did not get a lot of details on it. If we can get some information on that, we'd appreciate it if anyone has been facing this issue. Or is this the same issue that we discussed with you, Ala? It's the same issue? Okay, if it's the same issue, then I believe we've addressed that already, and we'll work on fixing that. One of the comments that one of the requests that we've received, and I've received earlier, but this is the second time we get it, is that to allow manufacturers to create duplicate requests. So instead of creating a new request and filling all of the information, allow manufacturers to create a new request, copying information from an existing application. And we're going to allow that. So the manufacturer can now enter into an existing request, ask to create a copy, and just change, for example, the CCR number or the model year or etc. And this would save a lot of data entry into the system. I think that addresses most of the comments that we've got on the subject. And the last part that we have talks about phase 2 of the standard. I do not have much to share with you, to be honest, at this point in time, because we are still tampering with multiple ideas. We are looking into the possibility. We're looking into the possibility of developing our own curves rather than using NetSys curves for the time being. We're also waiting for the US to produce the curves to see if they're matching or not, or if they can work for us or not. We do compare the market performance. We do compare the vehicles sold here in the US, and the markets sort of still seem to be close to each other. They're not identical, obviously, but they're quite close to each other. But there is also a very important structural change that has happened at the beginning of this year, which we are sure is going to have some impact on the vehicle market, which is a change in the gasoline price. And it was rather a significant change that we are sure is going to change the sales. So in order for us to issue a standard without taking that into consideration would be short-sighted. So this is why we have to take also this into consideration, see how that is also going to change future choice for the consumer. And all of these things combined have forced us to push the issuance of the first draft from June, July this month until December, June, July, sorry, this year until December of this year, in order to allow us to take these into consideration. If the manufacturers do have any suggestions, points to be taken, etc., then this is the time to share them with us on the second phase, so that we can consider them. Now, we're going to definitely, at the time when we share with you the phase 2 of the standard, we're definitely, after a month of sharing it with you, we'll definitely have another workshop, hopefully not in this setup, but in a round table where we can discuss the targets, discuss their achievability, discuss the flexibility mechanisms, the potential changes that have to be done, etc., in order for us to achieve our goals without overwhelming also the manufacturers and giving them something that they cannot comply by. Okay? One of the comments that we've received is that some manufacturers did not sell vehicles in the country in 2016 or 2017, and they've been asking us to push the phase-in for them to the first year when they started operation. But that does not seem, you need to understand that this is not a rational request, because these flexibilities were established through our discussion to allow a smooth entry of the standard. Now that enough lead time has been provided for the manufacturer, this phase-in mechanism, a delayed phase-in mechanism, is not necessary. The manufacturer should have planned enough in order to achieve the target. Yes?
I'm Sahi Hatem from Great Wall, China.
All right.
We are the one who provided this comment. Actually, it's a little bit different than what. In 2016, we didn't export any car to Saudi Arabia. And in 2017, we have received a deficit report. However, that was our question, from where the deficit came, since we didn't export any car. We didn't sell any car. In 2017, we have done the contract with the distributor in Saudi Arabia, and we start using we start exporting our cars to Saudi Arabia. Okay, so that was the first question. Second one, our cars are, so far as everyone, gasoline engine. and we are improving year by year. However, we are still far from the target. So how can we close this deficit? How can we reach the target if every year it's increasing? Especially that we have diesel engine, Euro 4, but it's not acceptable in Saudi Arabia, so we cannot do the balance. And all our products are SUVs. We don't have sedan cars or small cars, which can do also the balance for the credit, to get credit from the other one. Because all our cars are either light truck, Wingle, or SUVs, which are the Haval. So the second one, we would like to know your thought, how to increase our credit and reduce the deficit, and how can we get rid of the deficit we start in 2016, since we didn't sell any car, and even these cars doesn't have Intertech or fuel label. So how come Saudi Arabia could enter or allow such cars to enter the market? So
That's a very good and important point, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
Now, from now on, first I apologize for the misunderstanding, but this is the way I read the comment that you've sent. Now, my understanding is that the vehicles that you brought into the country were GSO certified. They may not have the Intertech label, which is not, by the way, required anymore. But as long as they're GSO certified, then they are vehicles that match the requirements in the GCC, and then they would have to be accounted against the manufacturer. I know that you didn't have a dealer here, but since you've certified vehicles and they're coming in the country, they need to be accounted against someone, and they need to be accounted against the manufacturer. Now, if you're telling me that the models, some of the models or all of the models that have been accounted against you in the report are not GCC certified, then it becomes a different story. These vehicles cannot be accounted against you. And I guess that's a very important point for manufacturers who are here today, because we did discuss this extensively, and if a vehicle is not compliant with GSO requirements, then we go back to the importer and check with that, and more importantly, it would not go into the manufacturer's pool. If a vehicle is not GCC compliant, it would not go to the manufacturer's pool. Now, if the incompliance is related to the safety note on the mirror, then that would not be considered incompliance, because it's a simple change. Now, if the incompliance is due to performance requirements or safety requirements that are embedded in the vehicle, then this vehicle would not be considered. And as a matter of fact, if you ask my colleagues here from the laboratory, I don't know, they were here earlier today, they have been rejecting a lot of vehicles. A lot of vehicles are being imported, and they're rejecting them back from multiple manufacturers. Models, even some models that are offered here, but that are not designed for GCC market, they have been rejecting them. And by the way, we're going to tighten on that a lot. So we're not going to see vehicles that are not compliant with GCC requirements here anymore.
Sorry, Natalie Thompson again from Mercedes-Benz. Could you give us some examples of the kind of thing that's been rejected? Because I think that would be very useful, because I think we all have a certain level of grey imports in Saudi Arabia, which we can see in the quarterly report that you send to us. But so far, I haven't been asking you to exclude those, because I'm not clear on exactly what they could be excluded for.
If a vehicle, now, we do have, you're aware of the GSO requirement on vehicles, and I'm sure that you are compliant with that when you bring in vehicles or when you certify the vehicles. But if a vehicle does not have any of the safety features or any of the requirements any of the key requirements, at least, in the vehicle, then this vehicle would have to be excluded. As a matter of fact, this vehicle would have to be removed from the market altogether. For example, let's say, and I'm just using this as an example, let's say that the side airbags are now, I don't know if there are other requirements now, the side airbags? Not yet? Fuel type, for example, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's very helpful. So European vehicles. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Okay, Very useful. Are there any other examples like that that we should... Safety. Okay. So when we notify you then, all we need to say is all of these VIN numbers should be excluded because they've come from Europe and they therefore have the incorrect fuel type for Saudi Arabia, and that would be acceptable?
If that is a point of incompliance, then yes. If there is another point of incompliance, then please mention that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Right-handed.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Just a question here to make sure that I understand this perfectly, because I'm a bit confused. So are we saying that non-GSO spec vehicle will be removed from the report? So once I receive the report, if I identify that those vehicles are not sold in the GCC and they are not GSO spec and they do not have any CCRs against them, then, as I understand, they will be omitted from the report. Would that be a correct statement to make?
Yes.
CCR cannot be available for a vehicle sold in Europe because that's a different spec vehicle. Okay, so as a statement, if it's a non-GSO spec, okay, because we have incident where vehicles were sold in the US, and we know in which exact state and dealer that sold the vehicle, which is a complete US spec vehicle, it's not GSO, and then we just found them in the report. So, as a matter of fact, if it's non-GSO spec, it will be deleted.
You just
as a rule of thumb.
Yes, you want to mention to us if it's a model that's non-GSO certified altogether, and I hope Mr. Nagata wouldn't mind me using Toyota as an example here. But for example, if you have a Toyota Tundra which is not targeted for this market altogether, then it should not be accounted in Toyota's report. So this would not be taken into consideration. Now, the other part is that sometimes you do have a model that is certified in the US, let's say, for example, the
GMC Yukon or
the GMC Yukon or whatever, and but the model that is sold in the US or that has been exported to the country has specifications that are not a match with the GCC. You just have to tell us that this is not a match for the GCC for these reasons, and it will be removed from the report.
Okay.
And I believe that we have removed several vehicles from the manufacturer's reports because of the incompliance. Now, some manufacturers do inform us that these vehicles are not compliant with the GSO, but they do not provide the specs or why they are different. And when that happens, it becomes a bit challenging for us to decide on should this model be removed or not.
Okay, but for us as a general rule, if it's non-GSO spec, it should be deleted, and then we can discuss the details. Okay, thank you.
But you said that Arabic mirrors is kind of don't worry about that, right?
Yes, if the only difference is the Arab print, then that would not be.
What about the overspeed, the 120 kilometer overspeed? That is a unique requirement for GCC or GSO, and it wouldn't be found anywhere else in the world. So are you treating that one as a GSO specificity?
If the vehicle is fitted with a miles per hour, with a miles per hour speedometer, and not a kilometer per hour conversion, because some of them are fitted with both, then if it's only fitted with the MPH, then that would not be acceptable.
No, I'm talking about the overspeed warning of the noise or the visual.
To be honest, Andy, I do not have all the specifications. I'll have to check with the teams because that's not my sort of specialty.
It's a GSO requirement. It's unique in the world, right? So in theory, we get vehicles coming from Mexico and US. So I just need to know if that's a difference or not, right? It's not a big difference, but it's a unique engineering challenge for us all. But I understand the Arabic mirrors that's not a differential. I understand that. But it would be useful to know whether the overspeed is...
No, I agree with you, and we need to come up with a definition and share it with you of what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah. But you're saying a cluster in miles per hour would make that vehicle, so a US vehicle with a miles per hour cluster would not be acceptable in...
By the way, right now, my understanding from the laboratory team that we have today is that if it's not a GSO vehicle, period, it has to go out. But instead of me giving you that commitment, let me just clarify that because that will make it easier for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Really good. Thank you.
Mr. Ibrahim, thank you for your time to have this meeting.
I definitely remember you. I cannot, I won't forget that fast.
Yes, this is Miyashita speaking from Nissan and Japan. I want to confirm this slide related. Well, it is very important things is related with first discussion items. It's about EVP calculation items. I confirm. In order to maintain your natural resources, at the moment, EV is PHEV is not so contributed. Yeah, you are correct. And also, thank you very much. You are considering about EV PHEV incentives, such as tax reduction or something. I recognize that point. Then it is very respectable for us also. However, I want to confirm, you are going to draft it about phase 2 requirement. Then frankly speaking, I have a concern if the phase 2 requirement is the same as USA's one. In that case, I'm not sure now, but in that case, still you didn't consider about the scope of standard 2864, I mean calculation method for the CAFE, to be reconsidered or not. Means, frankly speaking, is if you referred same one as than US, in that case, I want to gather as much as possible, frankly speaking.
I understand.
And also, as you may know, Nissan have the EV. We want to keep the motivate to introduce the EV. In that case, we want to have some benefit for the EV as well. How can I say? Is there any possible to reconsider again regarding the standard 2864 after you establish the phase 2 requirement or not? I want to confirm that point.
First, I do not want to get, from the first part of this workshop, I really do not want to be misunderstood of we are not being welcoming of electric vehicles. No, we are absolutely welcoming of electric vehicles. Any technology that works, any technology that has potential, we're very welcoming for that. But what we are not very fond of doing is that assigning a fuel economy to an electric vehicle that is much higher than what it reflects in real life. This we do not want to do at this point in time. Again, these parameters that we have in the standard are for the coming 2 years, right? But for the standard that is coming in 2021 up to 2026, there will be different parameters. I cannot share the parameters with you at this point in time because they have not been finalized, but they will be different parameters. They are definitely going to be higher, but they're going to be reflective of a higher fuel economy equivalence for electric vehicles. But by how much higher, this I cannot tell you at this point in time because we do need some to check with our management agreement, analyze the impact, etc. But it's definitely going to be higher because the efficiency of the upstream is not going to be lower, all right? One of the things that we are also looking at is the incentives for electric vehicles in terms of credits, super credits, etc. I didn't want to mention that, but this is some things that we are looking at. But for you, in order to include all of these things in the standard, you have to make sure that you are aligning with the different strategies in the country, making sure that everything is working in line and so on. But now I cannot assign any, I'm not sure if the standard is going to have credits or not, and I cannot share the numbers with you. But I assure you that we are considering all of this. Now, on that point, on the point of incentives, we did receive a comment on the financial incentives of electric vehicles. And to be honest with you, this is beyond the scope of 2864 and beyond 2847. In order to, for example, provide the Saudi consumer with 10,000 Saudi riyals or 8,000 Saudi riyals in order to buy electric vehicles. I do not know if this is being studied or not, but it is beyond the scope of this, and it is not SASO or SEEK specialty. It would be some other department specialty, so I cannot comment on that if it's happening or not.
Okay, Thank you. And also, sorry, another one. So let me have some remark about that. You are presented this slide about you are going to make a workshop after to gather our comment for the phase 2 related.
Yes.
Then, can you expect when you are going to do that kind of workshop?
We are going to share with you the first draft in December.
Yes.
December, we're sharing the first draft.
Yes. After that?
Sorry?
Another December 1st. December will be announced another 3 months later. You are going to make the workshop or something?
That's why I didn't hear you. Sorry.
December is December. Workshop also will be held in December, what?
No, workshop, we have to give you at least 1 month to review, and then we can have workshop. But I will inform you of workshop 2-3 months in advance, so that you can plan for it. But once we share with you the draft, and we plan to have a workshop, we will have some time in between to allow the manufacturers to review, provide their comments, and then we're going to have the workshop. Okay?
Understand. Then, sorry, final one. Then, please allow to say like that. Finally, you are not going to the individual OEM's discussion with you. I mean, on and after, you are going to use this slide to discuss about this issue.
Yes. From now on, and it's not my choice, by the way, but from now on, all the meetings would have to be conducted in the same manner to allow a fair conversation and share participation for everyone. But this is how we're going to do from now on.
Okay.
We're going to do it yearly, but since we have a standard coming, we're going to have a special workshop also. So this year we may have to. In addition, yes, the portal is different. It's a one-time thing, yes.
For any new regulation or something, to make special one for the regulation itself?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Can we ask just for it? We are okay to be yearly. We are okay to be yearly, but if there is any coming regulation or something, we can add some one meeting for especially for this regulation.
Wallah, Umar, I'm not following. Sorry. Can you bring the mic closer?
Sorry. We are okay to be yearly for the workshop, but for any coming regulation, can we make special meeting for this regulation?
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is that we're going to definitely? I'm saying is that if we share the draft in December, then 4 to 6 weeks after, we need to have a workshop to discuss it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. One thing from Toyota Motor Corporation. Anyway, thank you very much such an occasion for discuss it directly. And then also, I really understand that what the purpose of for the future for the regulation for CAFE. I have the 2 suggestions or requests. One is to promote for such a fuel efficiency. So there are in the short term, in the not EV, but hybrid electric vehicle. Hybrid would be the possible scenario to contribute to such energy efficiency. So for the future consideration, so please take into consideration about some of the super credit something for the hybrid vehicles. That is the first suggestion. And the second is for our manufacturing side, we need some lead time to do development for the future product line. So not only for meeting the CAFE regulation, also that we need to follow up the GSO emission control. Now the combination is not easy for us to meet together because the emission is we should consider that the CO2 output, and that is sometimes just against for the fuel efficiency, something like that. So you were requested to talk with the GSO side about the planning for the emission control scenario in the future, together with your CAFE regulation scenario. That is a 2 suggestion request from us. Thank you.
I'm not sure. I've captured everything, Mr. Nagata, because the mic voice was a bit low. But I understand the challenges that you face in meeting the emissions targets against the emission standards of GSO, against the fuel efficiency standards. But again, as I've mentioned, is that if the targets that we have right now are not new, you were introduced to them a while ago, and again, electric vehicles were not allowed to start with, and now we're allowing them. And as for the next phase of the standard, we want to work together so that we put targets that are achievable under current circumstances, that we don't have to do any additional, left or right turns in order to achieve the targets. No, we want to put targets that are achievable. Are the targets going to be exactly the US targets? I cannot tell yet, because I don't know what the US targets are. But one of the things that may happen is that, yes, they may become US targets. But again, I cannot say that it will be a target that I am not, that is still remains unknown for me. Okay? But once these targets we are aware of, we'll definitely make sure that we share them with you as soon as possible, so that you can proceed with your planning process.
Yeah. That is second. First one is I'm just more focusing on the hybrid vehicle.
Heavy vehicle?
Hybrid.
Hybrid
vehicle.
Yes.
Well, that is just some realistic scenario to contribution to the energy efficiency. So some more focusing on applying the super credit to the hybrid vehicle. That is just my suggestion.
So you're proposing that we introduce incentives for hybrid vehicles? Is this?
Yes, incentives or any other super credit for exclusive for the hybrid vehicle.
It is something that will, again, as I mentioned, we are collecting comments, suggestions for the next phase of the standard. So please feel free to share the suggestion with us. And once we have our next gathering, we will discuss all of these suggestions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Final question from my side, if I may, please. So the two draft standards that we've discussed today, 2864 and 2847, when are we expecting final approval?
Very soon. One of them has already been. One of them is already. Actually, both of them have been published on the WTO.
Published and approved.
Yes. But we are just changing. We're going to change the PHEV calculation methodology, as we have discussed today, and then we're going to republish them.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I have one last question.
Sure.
The conversion for KSA Cafe for NEDC. Obviously, you know the WLTP. Is there any, what is your position on that at the moment? Because obviously the tables are changing over. Are you going to change in the next cycle and leave it as it is at the moment?
We're going to change in the next cycle, and you're not going to like what we're proposing. But I'm going to leave it to its time. But, okay. We're only going to use CAFE. We do not want to use the NEDC conversion anymore. And the problem is that NEDC conversion for some types of vehicles, especially hybrids and electric vehicles, is not a very good conversion factor. And this is why, even for now, for electric vehicles, we are trying to use the SAE testing alone. Now, if we continue with the NADC testing, then we need to come up with a better conversion methodology, because the one that we have right now is not the best. It was done so that to ease the introduction of the standard. But then, after all, we have to decide on one testing methodology, because doing both it's not done in any other market. We have to decide on one and move with it.
But will you move to WLTP?
We are looking into that.
Because NEDC is obviously moving to WLTP. So
Correct.
for all European manufacturers at the moment, it's a big problem.
Correct. We're working right now with the ICCT, International Clean Council on Clean Transportation, on studying this aspect. So we're looking into that.
So for the current cycle period, until at the end of the cycle, are you staying with NEDC?
Yes. Yes.
But then for the new cycle that you're going to, obviously, the draft, we'll look at it in the new draft.
There are considerations, yes, of dropping NEDC, and some maybe adopting the world harmonized cycle. But
for the time being, no change?
No, no change.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
There is a disconnect between the SASO published EV regulation and the SASO proposed amendment for the fuel economy label. So the current EV requirements for SASO states that only in EDC is the test procedure for fuel economy and range, and only label energy consumption and fuel economy will be tested according to NEDC. So I would appreciate if we can carry over the amendments that are being undertaken now for the SASO label to be same as what we have in the SASO EV requirement.
The EV requirement is based on saying testing has to be done on
only in EDC, and only to make any marketing announcement only according to NEDC. Which is, I mean, it's on SASO website. So we appreciate our understanding as industry that the SASO drafts that we are discussing right now for the fuel economy label is the basis of the future for EV and plug-in hybrid, and it will supersede what is on the current website.
Okay. Can I make a slightly tangential request, but I think it's important. So one of the key enablers to improving fuel economy is good quality fuels. And also, we understand at the same time there is a plan to move to European 5 emissions at 21 model year for the region, GCC region, including Saudi Arabia. The movement to high-efficiency powertrains and good emissions vehicles requires high-quality fuels, and it has to be in advance. The fuel has to be in place. We have to know it's going to be there because we're designing products to be there at the point in time, okay? So is there certainty that the fuels in Saudi Arabia are going to move to 10 ppm sulfur in a time frame which is suitable for improving the vehicle powertrain quality? So Mohammed, when is that going to be? Were we seeing that in 19 calendar year? Are you able to tell us definitively that sulfur and gasoline and diesel will be 10 ppm?
We do have one refinery left, and then the whole country would switch to Euro 5 specification fuels. So 10 ppm on gasoline, 10 ppm on diesel, right? And this refinery is scheduled for the change out in 2020. So by the end of 2020, we will have the Euro 5 fuel across country.
Okay. So that helps us a lot in planning powertrains for the region.
Yeah, but I have to also prepare for the emissions specifications to change on gasoline vehicles and diesel vehicles to Euro 6, because that's probably going to happen as well.
So, okay, so you're thinking of Euro 6 as well. So are you able to tell us then? So you're looking 21 model year Euro 5?
I cannot tell you with confidence, Andy, just to be clear. I cannot tell you with confidence. But the plan is to request Euro 6 in 2021.
Euro 6 in 21? Yeah.
That's something that I told you, I cannot tell you with confidence. We are still in discussion with GSO on that.
These are big technology changes.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
And the problem is, if we design our vehicles for Euro 6 and the fuel is Euro 2, we are in big trouble.
No, I understand that the engine is probably going to erode and die.
Yeah, and we'll be too late.
Yes, I know, I completely know.
Yeah.
Because of the recycle, I understand, because...
The issue is the result investigation process also, and there will be always a manufacturing issue. So,
I understand. I understand that when we say Euro 6, then it means that we have to commit on the fuel being available on that date. We completely understand. And we will not put something unless we are sure. Sure. By the way, these are these investments are multi-billion-dollar investments. So I'm not guessing here. These things are happening.
But likewise for us, these are multi-million-dollar investments.
I understand too. Yeah. I understand, and we don't want to put you at risk as well.
But we had bad experience this last 6 months, 8 months, right? Or maybe a year, right? With the Euro 4, not Euro 4, so I have to say, I think we need a drop-dead date by knowing the fuels happened and then the emissions. Otherwise, collectively, we'll get ourselves a real mess. Your Saudi customers will...
I understand, Andy, but you have to also understand that SASO never committed to Euro 4. SASO never committed to Euro 4. So I know that some countries committed to Euro 4, but by the way, I know that the EU communication has been...
GSO published Euro 4.
I know, but Sasha never committed to that.
Okay.
I understand the dilemma. Okay. We're talking Euro 5 now in 2021, and this is what's going to happen. I'm sharing it with you right now. You're soon going to get something official on that.
So I think the fuel issue, and then we need to know it's Euro 5 or Euro 6. You know, if you can, what we don't want to happen is plan on Euro 5, then it becomes Euro 6, or the other way around, right?
No, that the emissions requirement, the exact emissions requirements, we're going to also share that with you.
Please.
Again, as I've mentioned, nothing is set in stone. We did not reach an agreement with GSO for the time being, by the way. So, but we're going to see how that's going to work out.
That makes a big difference to the technology choices for us, yeah? If electric vehicles are no longer going to provide the framework which delivers the credits, then we want to be able to use the latest technology powertrains. Okay. So it fits together, the whole thing fits together, but I don't want to have the rug pulled underneath us, right, from planning something that then can't happen. Yeah?
No, I understand.
Hello, sir. I'm from Guitu, China. Just now we said, now our credit is deficit, and our gasoline engine vehicles cannot catch the fuel target for 2019 and 2020. But for diesel engine, now our cars is above Euro 4, Euro 5 and Euro 6, not export to Saudi. And for EV vehicles, now we have, but now Saudi no infrastructure such as the chargers and the other issues. Maybe need 4 or 5 years the EV can come. So during this situation, we know that if you have deficit, this year, maybe next year, and after next year you can sell. But after 2 years, you cannot sell to Saudi. That means maybe we should out of this market for 7 years to wait the electric car. So how can we solve these problems?
Can I just allow me to clarify? You're saying that there are Euro 4 vehicles, diesel vehicles or whatever, coming into the country from other GCC countries for you?
No. We are trying to say that we are exporting to UAE market Euro 4 engines, but we are not allowed to import it to Saudi Arabia. That's the first side. Second side, we are in a deficit for this year, and we will be in a deficit for the next 2 years, which means when we are able to import our electric cars, which are already available in China by now, okay, we will be out of the market. So by the time Saudi Arabia are allowing us to import electric cars, which we are efficient in it, we will be out of the market because 3 years in a deficit with no credit, so we won't be allowed to enter the Saudi market. So what are your thoughts and what are your comments regarding this one? If we are not allowed to use Euro 4 and Euro 5 diesel engine, which we have in China, and we cannot use electric cars for now, we understand the infrastructure and everything. So what are your comments and what are your thoughts and what solution we have to stay in the market for 3-4 years more until the electric cars and diesel engine would be available in Saudi Arabia?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot provide you with the unfortunately, I cannot provide you with a solution, because if I provide you with a solution, it means that I would give you some special treatment, which is not going to be possible, honestly. It's not fair, right? So this is the situation that we have in the country. You know about it, and we were hoping that it would have been planned for in order to be able to meet the targets, etc. My suggestions on how for you to achieve your compliance, you're better situated to know how to achieve compliance and exceed targets than I can help you, honestly.
Don't you think the target is a little bit on a higher side?
No, not at all. It's the lowest globally. It's the lowest globally, and I can assure you that. So it's not too high.
Can I ask about diesel? Do you see at the moment the price of diesel is very attractive in Saudi Arabia?
Diesel being practical in Saudi Arabia? I think yes. I think there will be some acceptance.
So diesel relative to gasoline is probably the lowest in the world, I would think, right? The relative price position of the two.
Yeah.
So do you see, I mean, it sees that and I know you burn diesel for creating electricity, and there's a shift to electricity being generated from renewables. So do you see diesels as a fuel for passenger cars here? Is this something that's in the mind of SEEK and SASO? Is diesel seen as a potential passenger car fuel here, or is this something that's strictly viewed as being a commercial vehicle fuel?
So let me just clarify something. SASO is the entity responsible for putting the standards, but they cannot incentivize diesel in any way. But all in all, our studies indicate that yes, there will be some acceptance to diesel in the market. Not all vehicles, but vehicles that require higher torque, vehicles that are more the higher consuming vehicles. There will be a lot of acceptance for those vehicles, and we do project a penetration of up to 20% in the future, if obviously the performance favors diesel vehicles as it is today. But then again, 20% is on the longer run, so that's 12 years from now. If I do have a question for you, so please don't take all my time.
I'm just going to mirror what Andy said regarding. I'm sorry. I'm going to repeat the question of understanding when Euro 5 and the big surprise is Euro 6. We just need to understand when are we expecting 2021. That just dropped from my notes. So can you just repeat?
It's again, it is something. Now we're here trying to be open with each other. So I'm just telling you that's something that we are discussing with GSO. Now, if it proves to be technically infeasible, then obviously we're not going to do it. But the reason for Euro 6 introduction is because we want diesel vehicles to become part of the fleet, right? We want diesel vehicles to be part of the fleet. If it was only gasoline vehicles, it wouldn't matter if it was Euro 5 or Euro 6, correct? Because the emissions are quite close, exactly the same. But because we want to introduce diesel vehicles, this is why we are discussing with GSO the potential to introduce the Euro 6. I'm not saying that they have agreed, and I'm not saying that they're in favor of that. I'm just saying that we're in discussion to see what's best for all. And as soon as we manage to convince them a little bit, they'll contact you. But they have not been convinced yet, so that's why they haven't contacted you yet. I do have a question, actually more of a request. I've sent you, SASO actually sent you a request to provide us with what do you envision as a theoretical age for vehicles? I'm sure that you've all received that. I'm sure that you do not want to answer that, but I'm going to have to ask you again. It's very important for us on a study that we are doing on what is the theoretical age for a vehicle. Now, this theoretical age, by the way, some have responded, and I thank them for that. But I do need more responses because 2 or 3 are not enough. We need to understand when you design a vehicle. I'm sure that you do have certain lifetime of this vehicle at the time of the design. You want it to live for 200,000 miles, 400,000 kilometers. I'm not quite 20 years. You want how and etc. I'm not quite sure. But also, what we're sure of is that you do produce spare parts to support these vehicles. So you must envision some sort of an age for these vehicles at which you want to support, or for the duration that you want to support those vehicles. I'm not going to ask you to answer that now because I understand sometimes the sensitivity that can be associated with answering this kind of question. But if you can provide us with an answer within a week, that will be extremely helpful. It's not we know that it's not a question without an answer, but we know it's a question that you do not want to answer. But we'd appreciate, we assure you that there will be a lot of confidentiality associated with that.
One of the problems really is
if
the KSA has a process for, if KSA has a process for investigation, for example, in US we have a warranty for the vehicle. And we warranty the vehicle 10 years, for example, or 100,000 miles, whatever each manufacturer has. And we go with warranty based on the customer, how he uses the vehicle. If he maintains the vehicle, continue to do the same thing as the owner manual recommended, use the recommended fuel, everything documented, everything has, then we'll warrant these, whatever warranty. If it says 10 years, if it says 15 years, then we'll definitely buy back the vehicle. Even if we make a recall, we buy back the vehicle sometime to make sure that we honor that. There's a process that protects manufacturer as much as protects the consumer. We'd be glad to answer this question. But if there is no process, liability is going to be always on the manufacturer. So you can understand that.
No, I absolutely understand.
But the other part is we cannot answer this without a lawyer.
Okay. No, I understand that.
I cannot.
No, I assure you, you're not going to be prosecuted for anything. You're going to
well,
say at this point.
we know people in Korea go to jail because they're signing certain things, so you can't do that. So
no, the point is that this is not something that we're planning to put in a regulation, by the way, in any way. Okay, I want to assure you that. And we know that the age of the vehicle is highly dependent on the owner of that vehicle. We completely understand that. Some vehicles, by the way, they're on the road. Some vehicles live to be 30 years of age, and some die at 10. We completely understand that. But what I'm saying is that when a manufacturer, okay, let's put that question in another way. When a manufacturer produces a vehicle, how long are they willing to support this vehicle with spare parts? Is it 20 years, 25 years, 50 years?
I think there is a law about 10 years support.
This is the law that we have. Yeah, I know this is the law that we have here. But I wanted to know: is it an international thing? Is it something that you do? But there is a law, and there is what you typically do. This is what I want to know. I don't want the law. I know the law. I want to know what you typically do. Okay. طيب, sure.
When we expect the formal information regarding the fuel for the Euro 5?
I'm not the best guy to ask because I'm not working on that directly. I'm just, I work on and off with GSO, but I'm sure if you contact GSO, they'll let you know. You mean on the fuel availability itself, or on the requirements?
No, the fuel availability.
The fuel availability itself. It has to be clear to everyone by the end of this year because it has to coincide with the next phase of the standard for manufacturers to plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm talking about fuel. Fuel. All right. Are there any additional questions? Ladies, gentlemen, any additional questions? But first, yeah, you do.
Fortunately, maybe this is last one, and also, this is maybe last one, I guess.
Sure, absolutely.
Fortunately, just please. If possible, please let me inform about that information. In order to establish the phase 2 requirement, what is your main concern or bottleneck or something like that? I mean, a kind of a political question, I mean. The fuel price or some another bottleneck happens? What is, frankly speaking, I'm not sure why you are taking a time to establish the next one. Is maybe, I guess, that your target is, you are looking for some target or the requirement or something like that. But in order to considering about that, what is your first priority, the main bottleneck? Can you answer about that?
I'm sorry, but I did not follow. The voice keeps coming and going. So if you don't mind, can you say that one more time? I couldn't follow.
Sorry. I mean, I feel phase 2 requirement will be soon, but you need a time.
Euro 5 requirement.
No. I mean, just I want to go back to the original ones.
Okay. AV requirements.
Yeah. Then you take a time to phase 2 requirements, I feel, to be published then you are considering about many things. Is a fuel price or your infrastructures, another next economic generation or something like that. Then I want to know what is the main reason? How can I say? What is your major prioritized concern to be established, the phase 2 requirement?
There are actually multiple concerns. One concern is that we don't want to set targets that are not achievable. This is one. And on the other hand, we do not want to set targets that are very lenient, right? Now we understand that consumer choice in selecting vehicles affects the manufacturer's compliance, and it affects the overall fuel economy in the country. And consumer choice is affected by multiple factors. Understanding, now gender may also play a factor, fuel price may also play a factor. So all of these things are changing right now, and we do not have any historical precedents to allow us to tell with confidence what is going to happen in the future. Because we are not sure what's going to happen in the future, now we do have an understanding is that the overall performance naturally is going to improve naturally because fuel prices change, because some social things have changed, and it's naturally going to increase. But how much is it going to increase by? This is the part this is what we're trying to answer, right? If I do not take these into assumption and put my targets, it means my targets will be too low. If I take these into consideration and overshoot, my targets could be too high. Either way, I know that one of them is not a problem for you when it's too low, but this is a problem for me when the targets are too low. And this is why we have to set targets that are rational and reasonable for both of us.
Okay, I understood. Thank you very much. Now, this is also, frankly speaking, not only, how can I say, I'm not sure not everyone or not, Nissan side, fuel economy value related is a kind of limit, means OEM side is contribute much, everything, to be comply with the...
Fuel economy value is kind of a limiter on achieving, what do you mean, which fuel economy?
We are doing best, as much as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
Then, but if it will be the limit or something like that, then but I'm very pleased your comment is you are going to take on a balance to be established the requirement that is good enough for me. You are not enforced to OEM side only. I understand that point.
No, that I understand, but you understand that there was a chance to improve, and everybody who's doing their best, I'm sure that most of them can do better. And there are models that are not extremely efficient, that are being sold massively in the country, and some of these models can be improved, I hope, or at least can be quantities can be reduced, because so there are chances to improve other than EVs or other things. There are some opportunities for improvement, but again, right? There is a lot of a big factor plays a role in that, which is the consumer choice. So we do have to take that into consideration. We cannot always penalize the manufacturer for everything that happens, but we have to strike a balance where we incentivize the manufacturer for improvement and take into consideration the local choice as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just have one more comment that hopefully will summarize most of what we are concerned about it here. You're going to publish the manufacturer standing, basically, and everybody will know which manufacturer has loss and which manufacturer has credit, so we can start doing that. But the manufacturer has credit also had a choice not to sell anything, not to share. So that's his choice.
Wait. No. Can you say it again? You're saying, Dr. Ahmed, that manufacturer has the choice not to share their info. They have a choice not to sell.
Not to sell, basically, the credit.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely, yes.
So let's assume there is manufacturer A has a credit, and there is 6 manufacturer B, C, D, and E, F has loss, and they wanted to get this credit. But as a manufacturer, I'm not going to sell anything because I want to protect for changes. I don't want to say surprise changes, but I want to say changes might be affecting me in the future. what can happen to the manufacturer, the C, B, and D, and all these manufacturers?
Well, first, I don't know what changes you're referring to, but anyway, let's go back and
theoretically, if the manufacturer B, C, and D, depending on electric vehicle, power electric vehicle B and and stuff to comply, now they are not be able to comply for 18, 19, 20. 20 going to be out of the market because of that. Yeah. So if the 18 we have no compliance, then you have 19 to put a plan to compliance. But manufacturer A refused to sell, so 19 will be out of the market, or 20 will be out of the market. What's going to happen if the manufacturer that has credit, they will protect their credit to continue compliance, to be the only player in the market, and refuse to sell to everybody else? Are you plan to at least reconsider your target, at least reconsider your plan for adjusting these to adjust either plug-in hybrid electric, make sure the manufacturer has planned to comply or have a chance to comply? Because this is a big deal, really.
Let me say something, Dr. Ahmed. First, if one or two manufacturers fail to achieve their targets and we need to ban their vehicles, then it is what it is. Okay? We need to ban their least efficient vehicles, and it is what it is. We'll do that. Now, if we reach a stage where this becomes a monopoly, and I do not see a scenario where we reach that stage, then definitely we have to take an alternative solution. But I do not see us reaching a situation where it becomes a monopoly for certain manufacturers. And this is the part where we need to work on, also on the next phase, to ensure that this does not happen. Now, it's definite that some manufacturers won't achieve their targets in a given year. I hope not continuously, but some manufacturers, and we understand that they may not achieve their targets in a given year. If that happens, then we hope that they plan and they fix this situation. If the manufacturer consistently cannot meet their targets, then we have to apply the penalties. There is no other way. What's the point of having the penalties?
I just want to add that you mentioned that what kind of surprises. To be honest, just to make sure that the picture is clear from the industry side, we are under huge surprise. So the way that the EV and plug-in hybrid are calculated, it's a huge surprise to us because we have always been under the impression that we are following the US. Another surprise that you mentioned that in the phase 2, there is a consideration to generate a case A own curves. That's also...
Case what? Sorry?
That Saudi to generate a unique or different.
Yes,
okay, that's also, I mean, for sure, thank you for being, sharing the information and for us to prepare. But, we have been under the impression over the years that we are following the US, and more or less, we can come to a ground where we more or less US CAFE program plus or minus. And also in the first slide, you mentioned that the difference, case A target are 10 to 15% less. But I'm sure no one in this room has ever imagined that the EV credit will be 20% of what the US calculates, right? And this is a huge surprise. And we just wanted to make sure that this picture is delivered to SASO and SEEK because we hope that whatever kind of consideration could be made to contain those concerns, we appreciate that. Thank you.
I completely understand that there might have been some perception on how electric vehicles would have been treated. But I don't think we have deceived you in any way. I don't think we provided some information and then came back and said, no, we are going to change that. I don't think we've done that. But I understand where you're coming from. I'm not saying that this is that this came out of the blue. I understand the reference. I understand where you're coming from. I fully understand that. But I think we've explained enough where we're coming from, how we're using our methodology, why we are keeping to this methodology, etc. Now that we have this all together and we understand that, right? We need to work together, even to work together on developing the future targets, taking that into consideration. Now, again, in the next phase of the standard, we're also going to have a different equation for EVs because the parameters are going to change. They could change once or twice even during that time, taking into consideration the accelerated change in the power sector that we have here. But including consumer demand, yes.
Yes, so that's kind of to follow up on that, guiding your phase 2 rule-making efforts. Are you looking to preserve the consumer choice and the current fleet mix you have today into the future? Because that's where, if we look at a country like the U.S. as a similar mix, that's where the things like these high incentives on EVs are the tools that allow the fleet mix to stay where it is, and people to continue to buy the larger vehicles and even the sedans with V8 engines in them, because we're getting credits other areas. So if your overall goal is to maintain the same consumer choice and fleet mix today, then we're looking for whatever flexibility tools that allows us to maintain that. At least that's a good assumption that we're all working towards. If you're looking to actually reduce or increase fuel economy past that point, then it's looking at downsizing vehicles and restricting powertrains and things like that.
It's not that we're trying to preserve the current structure of the market in any way, but we're not trying to skew it as well. So we're looking at a market that naturally evolves depending on the situations that are being introduced to it. That's it. We're not trying to push electric vehicles in. We're not trying to push electric vehicles out. If electric vehicles prove to be an option, then they're going to be much welcomed by the consumer. As a matter of fact, we do have, well, even before issuing the regulation, which is a bit unfortunate, but it did happen, we do have a lot of Teslas coming into the country. So the consumer, to some extent, does have acceptance for electric vehicles. Now, do they have acceptance for electric vehicles because these are specialty electric vehicles, high-perform electric vehicles, they're rare, nice, etc., or because they believe in the performance of electric vehicles? We'll have to figure that out together.
As long as we understand that the EV and both realistically from the KSA point of view, which is, we appreciate that. There's no question about it. You have this right. We understand that this is more practically for you, for the country here, which is to meet their goal and demand. But also, the consumer part is important. If you find in general the consumer like US, some manufacturers really started not even starting producing sedan vehicle or small vehicle because there's no demand for it.
Right.
And we still have maintained the larger vehicle. That's what the consumer really wanted. So we hopefully can adjust the consumer factor in the calculation by doubling this factor instead of reducing the factor to them. In other words, make it also realistic in the consumer side, not only from the electric side, make also the consumer side be the realistic one. Demanding the larger vehicle from the Saudi market is more for the consumer, then it be double instead of the same level as the small vehicle.
Well, Dr. Ahmed, you have to understand that this is a strategic decision that I am not entitled to make. Okay? But that's all I can say about that.
Thank you.
All right? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. I hope that we've tried to answer all of your questions as much as possible. I know that we're not seeing eye to eye on the electric vehicle part, but we do understand where you're coming from, and we hope that you understand where we're coming from. We have to look at this as a target issue more than an electric vehicle issue, okay? And that's how we see it, right? And your comments will be considered when we do our next phase, the potential for achievement, the targets, etc., taking the reality of the situation and the calculations that we have into consideration. And I assure you that. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope you've gained something from this, and I've enjoyed the conversation that we've had, and I look forward to our future engagements. I'll leave it to my colleague here to close the workshop. Thank you very much.
كل الشكر والتقدير لكم على هذه المشاركة والدعم لكافة فعاليات البرنامج السعودي لكفاءة الطاقة، والشكر موصول لضيوفنا ممثلي شركة مصنع السيارات على الحضور والمشاركة الفعالة، ونلتقي في مناسبات قادمة بمشيئة الله. We'd like to thank you all for your active participation and support to all of the activities and events of the Saudi Program for Energy Efficiency. And I would like also to thank the representatives of the car manufacturers who have attended and for their very positive interaction and feedback. We wishing to meet you in our next events, and peace be upon all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please return the interpretation device to the distribution point We have, again, the refreshments are still there. Prayer area, if anyone would wish, it's in our in that side of the hall. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.